to another episode by the numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me as he always does in a nice new shiny setup. This time it is Dak and Cowboys Shields, the esports historian. We've got producer Sam pressing the buttons and doing the things that he does in the background, mostly smoking balls and occasionally laughing at what we say. And we've got
a really,
it's not bad, mate. It's a hell of a gig.
He's beat the system.
Mate, if I was 18 and he offered me that job,
did it, mate?
Yeah,
I never looked back since, but
Sam, of course, is 38, but no, I'm just kidding. He's a young lad, it's fine. Anyway, so yeah, just before we get into it, because it's an action-packed episode, and I know we're going to probably run long on it again, we'll just give a shout-out to the sponsors. So obviously, .com/RLS if you want to sign up for an account and place bets on esports events in a safe, ethical environment. Right now, if you deposit $100, they'll match up to $100 in your deposit, which you can use on the site. So you might be able to turn that around, turn it into, make a profit. Maybe not. Be 18, bet responsibly, don't go nuts. And of course, shout out to our other sponsor on the show, NordVPN. If you want a VPN, as in you want to go to certain websites that maybe you're not allowed to, or, it doesn't have to be like that. It can just be, you just want to be private in that. That's also fine. You can go to nordvpn.com/RLS and get 70% off. And it's a really good product. I actually use it. Sam uses it. I don't know about Duncan. I don't want to incriminate him in case he's sponsored by another VPN company. So
I'm not. It's all right
for now. But I guess we'll just move on. So, man, where do we even begin with this week? I mean, I know that
I would just say, listen, I've already teased it, but I would just say this: like, first of all, thank God that MIBR has given us a week off, because bloody hell, I felt like they were bloody.
You haven't. What are you talking about? They're on my show. Yeah, they're on my show.
The difference is this is like minor in contrast to the other weeks. Every other week it was like the fucking end of the world every time. This time though, the old favourites back in the crosshairs. Not Nip, it's Astralis. No. See, if you're following all these scandals and shitbags in esports, this timeline goes NIP, then it comes Astralis, and then goes MIBR. So that's the timeline we got there. And obviously, shout out to SK for just being the all-time greats, even when I worked there. So
yeah, no, fair play. SK really did have a fucking special line.
Yeah,
Yeah, they did have a special line of shit going on. But like, look, so let's all right. We'll start with the Astralis stuff, but let's just start with a story that probably was come out of left field for most people. And that's obviously Esatag, who only recently joined Astralis. He only joined 4 months ago, purchased not even purchased. His contract ran out with Heroic, and Astralis brought him in after he was
Which conveniently fucked the FPX deal to Flashpoint, but I think that was actually a bonus, believe it or not. I don't even know that was the main thing, No.
We're gonna bring up all of that stuff a little bit later on. But let's just talk about the move first of all. And then obviously he was on a relatively long-term contract. He was he signed. He was playing well in the Astralis lineup. Somehow found himself on the bench despite being one of the better players at recent tournament outings. And then Cloud9 themselves, looking to build a European colossus, they come swooping in and actually sign him. Now, there's a lot of fuckery around the numbers, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's just talk about the move on its surface. I mean, first of all, it was clear to me that now that the golden five of the Astralis lineup were back, that was what Astralis had always kind of wanted to go with, really, once they'd had a holiday. So this put Esatag...
What Device said on the HLTV Confirmed show, by the way, he essentially said something along the gist of something like, if the major happens, I would hope if the original five is in good form. Some bullshit, like he sort of couched it, but he basically said like the original five would play if they could.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure that is clear to everyone with like half a brain. Like, that's how it works in Counter-Strike. The whole 6-7 man roster thing is a joke. It's not real. It's just but again,
at least in that case, it definitely isn't. Maybe some other people are doing it, but the irony is Astralis brought the topic up, and they're the ones definitely not doing it.
Yeah,
and Rich, this reminds me of something I've complained about many times on this show before, which is the reason why, unfortunately, the field of investigative journalism. Listen, you know my feelings on it. Like I respect it as a field, but there's a reason I don't do it, and the reason I don't do it, I mean, I do like half of it, as much as I verify my own info, but I don't publish. And one of the reasons I don't do it, Richard, is I'm not joking. I've seen all the people who are the best in that field. And the worst thing is, there is no such thing as a publicly confirmed W in journalism. As in, think about how sports work, right? If you say, or I'll give you an example, like, here's a famous example. I'll give you a League of Legends one. So I'm famous for criticizing Reckless, the AD carry of Fnatic, right? It's a pretty famous like beef I have because I just think he's mad overrated. Now, with that said, I can talk all the shit I want on him, but if he wins the championship, I can't really say much. Like, I have to give him some credit at that point in time. I have to sort of go, you win. I can't say you didn't win because he won. He has the trophy. But here's the difference, right? In journalism, what happens is you already know you're right. You verified it all. Sometimes you've even got the fucking story from the horse's mouth. You just can't say it. And then every dickhead's going, but anyone could say that. And then when you publish it, right, even when, as is going to happen in a lot of the stories we're about to discuss now, everything you say turns out to be true. Like, think of some of the things we were bringing up. It's not a real 7-man rotation. They're just using it as they're using burnout as an excuse for certain people who want to wait out their contract or try offers. They're going to sell these players by increasing their all the things we said on this show, by the way. If people go back like 4 months or something, we'll never get actually the W for that. People who called us liars will disappear, or they'll do the classic move, which they all do already. But I've RES tagged you fuckers. I've caught you all. They just changed their opinion. Well, I always thought it was possible he could be doing that. Even the same people, like, how dare you disrespect them? They burn out. Like, so the problem is, like, this is one of the reasons I actually feel for people like you and DK, Jakob Wolf. Like, you can't actually get the W because the cunt can just keep denying it till the end of time. And then the worst is when fans go, got lucky. It's like, how lucky could one person get? Come on. Because everything we said about 3 months ago has come true.
Yeah, and I'm going to lay it out. I've written the timeline down.
Yes, so do
it. I will get into that. But I just want to talk about the move on the surface first. Obviously, this is the completion for Cloud9's lineup now. So I guess let's start there. Esatag coming in. Keep in mind, Esatag was a role player in Heroic 6 months ago, where people were like, yeah, he's decent. And I think that was about the end of the conversation you would have, really. Heroic were an up-and-coming team, but they weren't anything special in and of their own right. They were spoilers at tournaments, not tournament winners, not even close to it. Ironically, the roster they've ended up with, which looked worse on paper, is doing better than the old roster that they had. But again, online era, make it that what you will. So... who wins here? I did a video for Deserto, Duncan, postulating that everybody wins. That because Astralis, they've made money in 4 months off a player that they paid nothing for. They also get a player they no longer need off the books. So big win for them, I guess, that, they bought low, they sold high. Cloud9 needed an impactful move that showed them they were serious because the community was still on the fence about whether or not it was a Colossus. Incredibly, Esatag's stock has risen so much in the past 4 months that this was seen as a huge move, I think, by the vast majority of the CS community. So very good for Cloud9. And of course, for Esatag, as I said, role player in Heroic 6 months ago.
Oh, he couldn't even imagine the contract he has now.
Yeah, now the contract he's on, which the details of which were publicly released, I think it was, $44,000 a month salary? I mean, that's like a fucking dream come true for him. So he's having to pinch himself. So all things told, does everyone win in this move, Duncan?
In the sense you're using everyone, like colloquial, as in like the teams, etc. Like, people who tell the truth have obviously taken a massive L because, as I say, like we basically pointed out, there was never going to be a real 7-man rotation. So put it this way. To contrive it initially, I'll just say anyone who actually thought that Astralis was doing a 7-man lineup with Esatag and Bobski and Yogi and all, you've taken the biggest L's of all time. Like you just take more L's to the face than like an old school Wu-Tang fucking member on the corner or some shit. Bit of a street reference there for the kids,
No.
Then again, I say for the kids, old school Wu-Tang reference.
For the decrepit kids,
exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe the new kids on the block on that one, right? So what I'll say is this: I agree. I actually can't think of any downside to this move. Like, I will say, I also have to factor the Esatag angle into the online era. Like, he never looked this good on LAN. Like, I saw him playing those heroic teams. He was a competent player. Listen, he was never the worst player. In fact, actually, I saw why they replaced him. This is why it made perfect sense to me. They got him in place of Zipniks, because he did actually have some of those qualities. Like, he looked like he was willing to play any role. Seemed like he was pretty good when he was in the shit roles. Like, he just never, by the way, as a teammate, from the things I'd heard, was a very great teammate. If people don't know, he's like totally fluent in English. I think he's like, he lived in America for some time or something. So he speaks Danish fluently and English really well. And he's obviously a little bit more social than some of the other Danes, because he's not from just purely Danish. I don't exactly know what the story on that is, but it's just something like that. And so, yeah, I think basically, like, the main problem I have is I do think he's been a little bit overhyped by all this online play. Like, I made this stat the other day because I looked it up. I thought, wait, he hasn't even played that much. If people forget, the whole reason they had to get snappy last minute is because Esatag wasn't available until his contract ran out with Heroic, if people don't remember. So even though it had been announced he was going to Astralis, there was that period where they were using Yugi and then Yugi and Snappy because they didn't yet have the ability to use Esatag. So what a lot of people don't seem to realize is he's only played like 3 tournaments with Astralis. And over that, listen, one of them, the stats are really good. The other one, they're okay. So what I'll say is I do think he's been a little bit overhyped, as in, I saw people when they said Zipniks was going to come back in the lineup. I'm not talking about one random comment, like a decent sentiment of people like, well, how do you even think about taking Esatag out, though? It's like, what for Zipniks? Like, the guy won 4 majors. Like, wasn't everyone like 6 months ago worshipping that guy's feet for every clutch he wins and seems like a sleeper OP? Like, it shows how fast people like ride the hype train. So I do think he was overrated in as much as, listen, if I'm Astralis and I am doing a real 5-man lineup, spoiler, I always was. That's why I wouldn't let anyone go away until they had medical exhaustion. So if I was going to run a 5-man lineup, I would certainly choose Zipniks over Esatag. So I think, yeah, I agree. Everyone wins. For Cloud9, this is another one of those moves that's like, it's a gamble, but it's a shrewd gamble. Like, this guy's shown when he's given better positions, when he's given a bit of space, he can actually do some pretty good stuff. And I think to go from a team like Heroic, who I can tell you with KD and Calling was more of a loose style team. Listen, they had hundreds, they had some tactics, but that's not Astralis. So if you can slot into Astralis and at times in matches look like the best, yeah. That's real potential for the future. And then in terms of Cloud9, I love the signing. Like, listen, there was 2 or 3 other names that could have been in this position. And I will say they were bigger names. That's why I actually said on the past episode, like, anyone who thinks that because of the order, that like Mezzi, that they're going like down in order and they were going to go, no, like the last name was always going to be someone you'd know and someone you'd appreciate. So that's why, to me, the idea of people were like judging this lineup when it had 3, 4 players, the best was those dumbasses who, it's like you said on the last week, they're falling for the whole Juggernaut thing again. They're like, right, well, we sort of looked like fools with that whole Juggernaut thing where we said it was shit and that. Colossus, lol, what even is one? And this could never work. Like, so you guys never learn your lesson, do you? So what I'll say is, yeah, I think it's a good move. I don't think he's necessarily going to be the best player on the team, but I think when you've got players like Woxic, etc., there's obvious stars. But I like him as a player to round the team out, because the key thing is when you look at the players they've got, this is a guy where, as I say, he could fill in anything you need in the structure. So I feel like this completes the team for me. Like, if I look at Cloud9's team now, I realize because of the big numbers of the salaries, people are going to naively think they broke the bank and like paid big for everyone. They didn't actually. Like, if you look, the variance in the salary makes actually a lot of sense for what the value of those players would have been. It's just that fans don't know how much people make at the top end, and they definitely don't know the bottom end. Like, if I told people some of the top 10 teams that have crept in this year that make like fucking less than 10K a month, you'd be shocked. So right now, no one really knows the salary market except journalists and GMs. So I think actually the prices they paid, listen, some players they paid a premium for, some they got a decent deal on. I actually think overall they've done a very good job. Like I've said on past episodes, Henry's done a pretty good job as a GM starting out.
It's worth also noting as well that there's players they could have definitely lowballed and fucked over.
Oh yes,
like Mezzi especially is the obvious one. Like his
accept anything in that scenario.
His salary is obviously the lowest, but they could have put him on like a development contract. They could have fucked him and lowballed him, you know, way more than they did. They chose not to because obviously you want your player to be motivated. There's also a bunch of bonuses and performance bonuses built into these contracts no one knows anything about. Henry said it multiple times that if they win games, they're going to get paid even more. And these bonuses are all on a sliding scale depending on what the performance level looks like. But, you know,
that's actually a good idea, by the way, because anyone who knows sports knows that, like, the NFL, like, in fact, this even happened recently. I saw that when they, like, suspended, initially they said they suspended, but actually they just told him to take time off, that, like, Michael Thomas guy from the Saints. They had to, like, renege it and not do it because it would have like actually deactivated a bonus where he would have got like 20 million or something on his contract. Because you know how those things work. Like people don't know this. That's one thing coronavirus fucked, by the way. There's certain players where their NBA contract, for example, meant if you play X amount of games and you make like an all-star thing, or if you're certain players, sometimes they put a stat mark, and if you exceed that, you get sometimes like 10 million extra a year. So if you didn't play the game, or even worse, you get benched, you sometimes get fucked on those. So the premise with that, I think
shortening of the baseball season brought that up a lot to the forefront as well in American sports.
So I just think of this, mate. I wish this sort of a contract is what like FaZe Clan was on. I wouldn't have as much issue if these teams got paid mega bucks, but then when they shit the bed, they don't get the money. Okay, cool. If you make it incentive, I think that's actually another way to make the fucking market sane. We can't be signing people as though we're all like the brand new LCS teams that came in 4 years ago, just paying whatever they ask for. Like every new player can't be get paid 30K. Otherwise, we are going to end up with the most unsustainable salary inflation.
Yeah, and it's like I say, I mean, you can argue maybe Esatag's a beneficiary of this and maybe Alex is. But honestly, it's like you say, I think overall for the team, I think they've done very well here with the caliber of player they've got commensurate to the salary that they're paying them. Certainly Esatag's, I think his salary is inflated. I think that's fair to say.
Of course.
But also understand the situation Cloud9 are in. They're debuting in tournaments in November. They have to get somebody in. And I'm sure, like Esatag, I'm not saying wasn't the first choice, but he's on a short list of other players for fifth, and it's about who makes that value. Like, I mean, I'm sure Cloud9 saw JKS was available and thought about it. I'm sure they saw Jakob was available and thought about it. I'm sure there were other potential players that they could have gone after. Maybe even other Astralis players, like as you and I both know, Zipnix has definitely been talking to people. Bubsky tweeted out after this move, I was told by Astralis I could also leave. Remember that, because we're going to come back.
Do you know that? I don't know if you saw this, but he then deleted the tweet. I told everyone he did that on that last episode or where it was. Like, he's ridiculous.
He does it all the time, mate. He loves a delete-o. Like, Danny Delito, he fucking loves him
in the 10 minutes, basically, because he has like 10 minutes where he thinks about it and goes, am I actually out of pocket on that? And then he just deletes it instantly.
Yeah,
not even that outrageous, by the way. Like, I know why he probably deleted this one, because obviously Astralis has got a social media emphasis, so I'm sure they were on his arse.
Yeah.
Although, by the way, I will say Astralis.
Yeah.
Even if he did it of his own volition, you take another L when everyone thinks that you've got social media people managing your accounts when someone tweets and then instantly deletes it. Like, that looks like you told him to delete it. I'm not saying you did, by the way. That could just totally be on him, but it does make it look bad. Like, it's not a good look. And like I said before, by the way, the biggest L of all is the people who said there was a 7-man rotation. Because think about it, Richard. If I have Astralis, right, remember, it's one thing if I say I'm going to have the greatest 5-man lineup and subs. That's cool. I'd have no problem with that. And by the way, it would even be logical for someone like Esatag to take that role up and say, you know what? I mean, I personally wouldn't want to do it because I've always thought in sports it's kind of whack to be like the 6th man and win the NBA championship and be like, I'm a champion. It's like, not really, mate. Like, the guy who's a star player on the other team is probably better than you. But with that said, if he just didn't want to keep whiling away in tier 2 in Heroic and he wanted to be on the team, okay, fine. But I will say this. Logically, think this through, guys. If I wanted a real 6 or 7-man lineup and I was Astralis, so I want all the players to play, then logically I would want the 2 players I'm adding to be as good as the 5 I originally have. So when I find out Esatag is really good, it would make no sense for me to sell him. Because that's exactly what I wanted, was for him to be really good in my team and play games. In what scenario would I then go, well, since he's good, sell him? But I tell you what, here's a detail no one has thought about with Astralis. And it only dawned on me the other day, because everyone's just thinking about Astralis because of their championships. They think of Astralis as the #1 team. The idea of Astralis is once you get into Astralis, obviously you'd keep the player if they're good traditionally, right? Because you're the best team. So the best team doesn't sell because we're the best. But here's the angle people don't know, and you're going to know all about this. In fact, you know more about it than me, Richard. Because I was thinking about this the other day when I did an interview with a player, I'll just say, from the Danish scene, who also was in a scenario with the individual I'm about to mention. And this guy is notorious. So one of the people don't know is in Astralis because they just know good old Nicken and Lyholm and fucking this Casper Schmidt piece of shit ghost. They know those 2 guys. But the people they don't know is that guy Jakob Lund Kristensen or whatever his name is. Yeah. Kristen, maybe it is. I'm sorry.
Jakob Lund Kristensen.
There we go. And basically, that was the guy, if people don't know, who used to be the owner of Copenhagen Wolves. And what he notoriously did, first of all, Copenhagen Wolves used to be Astralis, by the way, before they were Dignitas. Like, that's where those players came from. And then after that, if people don't know, they existed for years and years and had like a who's who of Danish Counter-Strike in them, like fucking like I think like Yogi, like Hunden, like fucking Glaive, Snappy. Like, you can go through the list that like loads of people played for this team, right? But the reason none of you viewers know they played for the team is because you'd only play for this team for like a fucking month at tier 3. People in the scene would go, he's pretty good. And then you'd just buy him instantly from Copenhagen Wolves. And the most ridiculous one, I forget who it was either Kirby or Config. But basically there was one where they joined and then the very next day was sold for like 20k or 40k or something ridiculous. Like hadn't even like played a game. Like one day they were in. And so that guy, that's what I think they've been doing in Astralis. Like he is in Astralis, if people don't know. He is one of the, he's the COO, the Chief Operating Officer. So when we look at Astralis, that is that guy's wheelhouse. Like his wheelhouse is finding out how to sort of flip players. And he's done it already in this team. So I think people have really missed that angle.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think in that regard, like, first of all, like let's just call it for what it is, and that is that a lot of people are pretending that Astralis are like some sort of incredible liquid business, which of course, right, that they're not. I mean, they took a sponsor, right, that was a very dodgy company, took $1 million from them to essentially offer them legitimacy. We know nothing more about it, by the way. All we know is that that company is now folded. They were, of course, a cryptocurrency company called esports.com, and we know that the previous owners are being investigated for financial crimes. Whoops, guess we're not going to talk about that too much more, that Astralis took $1 million of their money. But the other thing is when they floated publicly, I mean, that also tells you its own story, right? I mean, like, you know, they wanted an injection of cash. They did, you know, they when you do an IPO, anything like that, it's about getting a cash injection. That's what they went for. So this is not a company, by the way, that like has millions and millions to burn. You know, this is a company that as soon as COVID hit, they told all their players, you got to take a 30% pay cut. And then went out and then got extra players. It makes no sense, right, on the surface of it. Why lower operational costs to then increase operational costs? Well, it's because of this asset flipping strategy.
That's another thing people don't know as well, right? The order on the Origin part, who, by the way, Chef's Kiss have now rebranded to Astralis in League of Legends. So I don't even have to do that whole thing where I remind people that Origin is owned by Astralis, because bizarrely, a lot of people didn't know, probably because it used to be like Expect's org in League of Legends like 5 years ago. But the detail people forget is this. Nobody in the entire Astralis group got fucked more than the Origin League of Legends player, because here's what happened. First of all, when they wanted to sign another star player, some of them were basically told, we'll sign him, but you have to take a pay cut. Now, by the way, you don't do that if you're a massive org that's got brilliant operations. If anything, half the shit that everyone's complaining about in esports is that people spend money too freely, that people are willing to inflate salaries. But that's the point. Astralis doesn't have money. So they told the Origin players, you want this other guy in, you have to take a pay cut. So they took a pay cut. I'm not talking about the 30% pay cut yet, guys. They then came to them the same year and said, oh, by the way, because of coronavirus, Step 3, question mark, you have to take a 30% pay cut, which I'm going to make voluntary. Are you ready for the scumbag aspect? Some of them were smart enough to go to a lawyer, like everyone should be doing in these scenarios, but some of them didn't. So the ones that went to a lawyer, he read their contract and he goes, you don't have to take any pay cut, mate. Just tell them no. So they did. And Astralis, like all bullies, just went, leave that guy alone, actually, and just leave him alone, actually. Don't make him take the pay cut. And then the ones that were just naive and were like, oh, okay, for the good of the realm, took the pay cut. Yeah, they just got less money. And then what happened a month or two later? They looked over. Oh, I love to watch. You know, at the moment, all the orgs are doing that. Fnatic players, Astralis, Origin. Oh, I love this world shit. Like a CSGO player who's never tweeted about League of Legends his entire fucking life. So they're all pretending, by the way, totally not prompted by their social media manager. These are all genuine personalities. So anyway, when they did that, right, they turn over and look at Astralis. Oh, how's things going in the other team in our org? That's weird. Why have they signed 2 extra players? They surely aren't free. Didn't I take a pay cut? Imagine being those fucking players. That's outrageous. That's disgusting, guys.
Well, just to underline it as well, because I know a lot of people who watch this probably only follow Counter-Strike and don't follow other esports. Astralis were fined just on the 13th of October. They were fined by LEC, by Riot Games, for multiple late payments towards team members. And also they said that the GM exhibited conduct unbecoming of an LEC team manager, and they got fined €5,000.
Oh, And by the way,
Legends.
just to clarify, because I noticed a lot of people got mixed up on this one.
They did.
They thought that you were talking about Deficio because Deficio just left. No, it was your boy Casper Vid. He was the fucking GM that got fined, essentially.
Yep. So you can go look into that. I tweeted about it, but basically, it just underlines why, you know, all the people who are saying everything is good over in Astralis, everything's fine. No, it absolutely isn't. And also, as well, just to make a point about JLK's asset flipping of players. I mean, that guy has if it's him doing it, his eye for talent's like nothing else. Because remember, Copenhagen Wolves didn't just flip CS players. He had Bjergsen in his team, sold him. In Hearthstone, they discovered Firebat over in America. His first professional team was Copenhagen Wolves. This is a guy that like has really got an eye for talent across multiple games. But Copenhagen Wolves, to survive, had to asset flip. They had to sell players. Yeah. That was he said that many times. We're a small org. We run on my money. This is what we have to do to live. Astralis shouldn't be doing that. Yes. And if you do need to do it, just be honest about it. Oh, wait, what's that? You can't be honest about it because it would tank your share price.
If people don't get this, by the way, and this is a topic that's going to come up later in this show as well, but one of the problems with Astralis is this. As Richard just pointed out, from the top of the org down, it's not that they won't be honest. I mean, I think some of them are actually scum human beings who would never be honest anyway, because the problem with being a fuck up who knows you want to fuck everyone else over is you're paranoid everyone's trying to fuck you over, so you never want to give them any like advantage of information. So even though I don't think
gotta love Glaive tweeting out what was it? A thief thinks everyone steals. It's like you have just described Astralis management perfectly. Well done.
But yeah, the part that people won't realize is they are actually, from the top of the org down, essentially obligated not to tell the truth if the truth can ever be in a negative light. So for the top of the org, as Richard says, literally have a fiduciary responsibility solely to their shareholders. They are not allowed to do or say things that damage the stock of the shareholders because they're the people who really own Astralis now. Similarly, the players, as I'm sure we're going to mention if we bring up your boy Glaive on HLTV Confirmed, notice they never fucking do that disclaimer, Richard. People don't. How does conflict of interest come up every fucking 3 months? People don't know what it is. If you go onto a show and you're like, I'm going to tell the real truth about Astralis. Oh, well, what do you think about this? Is it actually as bad as it seems? Is that player good or not? If the whole time you effectively have a metaphorical gun shaped like your contract pointed at you, that means you can't tell the truth. You must say that explicitly up front. And I'll throw this in as well. The HLTV people doing that podcast, I know a couple of you literally work for a news website, but I don't consider you some of your journalists. So I know you don't know this, but if he doesn't say it, it's your job to say it before you ask him the questions. I can't go and ask someone in like a totalitarian regime, so is everything okay here in this country? As a gun's pointed at them off camera, and then them go, yeah, everything's totally cool, and then put that out in good faith without ever telling their people, by the way, he was essentially coerced into saying that. Like, that's journalistic integrity. You've got to have it if you're going to be in this field, guys.
So let's go to the fuckery around the deal. Because it's an Astralis deal, so it can't even just be done in good faith on the surface of it.
They even fucked the journalists. That's what's so amazing about these guys. These guys will fuck everyone on the way out of a room.
So when the S-Tag move went ahead, my understanding was that a few journalists had heard about it, put statement, like asked questions of Astralis, asked for a statement, and basically, I think from what I was told, they got back, generic, like boilerplate, like, oh, the deal isn't done yet, could you just hold off, that sort of thing.
Classic one.
Classic.
By the way, any fan who wonders, when those stories come out and the guy's like, I only got 4 hours to comment. That's why you only get 4 hours to comment. Because every time you go, give me a couple of days, you break the story yourself or leak it to your boy. It's happened too many times in esports that I even tell my people who are friends of mine as journalists, fuck it. Give them a time, but give them a reasonable time, like 2 or 3 hours in the middle of a normal work day. If they don't reply, fuck them. At that point in time, they can't be trusted. There has to be a reciprocal relationship for us to give you time, guys.
Yeah. And so moments after the deal was finalized, the journalists of which there was more than one, I think, who had the story, they didn't get a chance to put the story out because they weren't contacted. And basically, the story was leaked to the Danish website, sport.tv2.dk, and almost certainly leaked by Astralis itself, just on the surface of it. Now, why, you might ask? Why would Astralis leak their own signing, leak their own story? I mean, first of all, you can bet. Well, no, but it isn't that. It isn't that. Again, it comes down to this controlling of the narrative, which is super important when you're a publicly traded company, because any negativity, any information that can potentially harm people's perception about the deal, you don't want that in there. So you leak it yourself to the Danish sports website that's been writing incredibly glowing things about you repeatedly.
Completely in their pocket, by the way.
Yeah,
all the Danish media is in their pocket if people don't know.
Yeah. So just to underline a detail of that, if you go to the Astralis site, and Sam, I've given you both of these links, you can see that when they were talking about the Esatag move, it was framed as being a historic transfer. They said that it was like one of the biggest deals in esports history.
Oh, I know what you're referencing now.
Right.
But then purposely said they wouldn't explain how much it was.
Then the very last line of their official post on their site is, Astralis and Cloud9 have agreed not to discuss further financial details of the agreement. Then the story leaks to the Danish paper, who fill it with, oh yeah, historic. It's only historic, guys, because of the salary being paid to Esatag in a 3-year contract. The buyout is in no way, the money Astralis get, the buyout is in no way historic, and multiple sources have publicly stated, including, I think, people like Nell, forgive me if I'm wrong there, Nell, but they've, and I think, Rush B Media, other sources have said the buyout was $500,000. So that's not a record signing. In fact, there were players going for that years ago.
Also, here's a point I'm going to make, that this is where I know, listen, I actually learned over the years, by the way. To me, it seems obvious, and it's like I'm just putting 2 and 2 together. But I get it. If people aren't in the field, you have to think a bit laterally. These aren't obvious things. So here's a point people have missed. Cloud9 explicitly said they want to reveal all the details of deals and buyouts and all this sort of stuff. Henry said he thinks it's good for the scene. They've been doing it for the other players. Bizarrely, they don't do it for Esatag, even though, as Richard says, in the Danish media, they're saying it's a historic deal. But then they make it sound like it's the Cloud9 side that don't want to reveal it. Because think about it, right? If you're the Astralis guys and you're selling to an org that likes to reveal the info for a historic number, the win for your shareholders is to say the number and all the terms of the deal. So what they've done there, by the way, guys, is they've essentially disingenuously presented it as though like Cloud9's asked us not to do it, so we've agreed not to, when it's obviously them who aren't going to do it, because as you say, the only historic part is what Cloud9 is going to do for Esatag. Nothing to do with Astralis. They are not in the historic part whatsoever. There is no PR win for them in that story. In fact, as you say, if the actual amount came out, if anything, people would probably be like I was earlier, was this just like a quick flip? Like they didn't even value them that. Like, yeah, exactly. Like these guys, every time they get a chance, they just, it's not even that they always outright lie. Sometimes they just like invert it, or like put something in a different order so it confuses you as to what you're supposed to like imply from it, etc. But like that's why I said I did a tweet like this, because you know what the sad thing is, every idiot fan goes like, it's just fucking PR, isn't it? Like it's just business, isn't it? It's like, no, this is bad PR. This is bad business. If you do good PR, I get tricked by it. I get tricked by PR all the time. Of course, if I don't know the field, I don't know the place, I'm like, oh, it seems like, the players he must have wanted to go to that team or something. Like, these guys just lie. That's it. And not only that, if you know the bit behind the scenes, they just blatantly lie. And what they actually bank on, and sadly, there's so many fucking idiots that make it happen. They just bank that everyone's so stupid or loves device shooting people with an AWP and thinks that means the Astralis org is device shooting people with an AWP. They expect those two things to cover their back, and it does. That's the worst part. We find out, but the others just blithely go on in their life, don't they? Like, there was still, it never ends, does it? The wash of Danish morons who tweet at you when you fucking comment on obvious corruption by Astralis. It's like one of those narcissist prayer things. Like, it starts out like, this is a lie. Why are you hating on them? And then eventually it always gets to those ones of like, well, is it a big deal anyway? When you've like proven the whole case, like, you can never win. But that's why you're right what you said on Twitter, essentially. Like, those people will always believe the shit Astralis says. So if you're Astralis, I get it. If you think to yourself, right, I could just blatantly lie and get my own way with like 90% of people, but then 10% of people listen to these like two British journalists and might not believe us, mate, that's a win for you. Like, I don't think it's good to do. I think there's no class in their performance. They're not even good at lying, but I get why they do it. It's definitely effective.
Yeah, and look, I'll just add, like, at the end of the day, I know us telling the truth and spelling all this stuff out to the community, I know it's a constant fucking thorn in their side. Mate, I've seen them, like, arguing with fucking randoms on fucking Twitter, like, having complete meltdowns because, like, people are repeating the talking points that we're bringing to the table. So, honestly, fuck them. But it's just so typical Astralis, the whole thing, that, you know, you've sold a player. Like, just the surface and the details, like, should be good enough. But no, you have to try and get some extra fucking, you know, shine on it. It's a historic deal. Yeah, for S-Attack. Yeah. You know, maybe even for Cloud9. Definitely, you know, not for you. I mean, you know, it seems absurd almost. But look, let's get to the key point I wanted to do. And that is, I want to completely debunk all of Astralis's bullshit.
Let's do it.
Just by taking a look at the fucking timeline. So, right. The narrative that we're supposed to accept from Astralis is, and this was put out there by the likes of Casper Fit and people like that, was that they wanted to build a 10-man roster eventually so people could have holidays and be treated well while still maintaining a level of excellence within their Counter-Strike team and being able to attend teams or tournaments rather all over the world, right?
And by the way, if people don't remember, they didn't even just stop there. They went as far as to blatantly lie and imply that you could even be like Device and Glaive, the most irreplaceable members of the team, because you're never going to have a brilliant in-game leader and AWPer just sat on the bench. Like, they even implied they could be replaced in the 10-man lineup and that everyone could rotate around. Like, they literally took it, Richard, to like the test case limit of credulity. Like, if you believe that, you will believe literally anything. Like, you don't even think of whether it's possible.
So let's take a look at this timeline then. So that happened after the Astralis team traveled like 4 continents in 40 days, you know, competed in like 5 tournaments in like whatever it was, 42 days, often making the final. I think the worst they did was the semi-final. You know, they won like 3 out of the 5 or whatever. They were all over the place. It was ridiculous levels for any team. But because they had financial obligations and had floated on the stock market, and therefore there's a fiduciary responsibility now that you can't say no, because if getting $1 million from the tournament organizer is commensurate on you fulfilling your appearances, guess what? You now have to go, or the people who own shares are going to go, well, why didn't you go to that? Why did you leave $1 million on the table? And the fucking players be damned, by the way, because I'll tell you, the shareholders don't give a fuck about the players. Right.
Oh,
so
but
anyway,
wait a minute, Richard, I thought the whole reason Blast did Blast Astralis wasn't because they were trying to build up Blast. It's because they cared about the players.
Yeah,
and you see, if Device travels east too many time zones, then he gets like ill and like he can't play. Fuck off. Like, you know what? I even think that was built into it, by the way. I think what they did was they were like, right, we gave you the Blast Astralis period. Now it's time to work, boys. You're going in the fucking mines. Down you go. And then they just worked them to death.
And then so during a period where this is up in the air, the players, as we know from reporting that's out there, said they wanted a holiday and better working conditions, better environment within which to train. All of which has been denied by Astralis, by the way, and even to a certain degree, in so much as what they can and can't say. The players of Device, in particular, when he went on the HLTV podcast, sort of said, yeah, there was some stuff in that report and that wasn't accurate or whatever, and that's fine, right? I know the game. It's all good. So anyway, at the time they ask for that, they are rebutted and told they can't have it. And then not only that, they are told you will also be taking a pay cut because of COVID. Now, during this time, that is when people were playing less, when they'd finally got to the holiday point, essentially, because tournaments were being cancelled left, right, and centre. No one was travelling anymore. People were playing from home. That was when the burnout supposedly kicked in for Zipnix and Glaive. They're two, you can argue in a way, perhaps even the most important players, because, yep, Device is open and putting up, you know, the numbers, but Zipnix is good for 5 rounds, probably just by himself with his clutching, and Glaive's your IGL. So, you know, you can make that argument. It's irrelevant. This comes supposedly after Zipnix, who, remember, was instrumental in creating the CSPPA, which is run by Danish people, consulted with Mads Oland, a notorious sports league pro-union ball buster, and then they go back to Astralis and say, we need some time off. Astralis publicly say, we have now decided We have now decided, because we love our players so much, to give them time off, even though it fucks us going to these tournaments. We are going to pick up ringers on short-term contracts because we want to build a 10-man roster. They do.
By the way, just so people understand for a second the context there. If Astralis and all the other players, Zipnik, sorry, and the other players who had burnout or issues with Astralis and wanted a break, if things were cushy, if things were awesome in Astralis, why the fuck would they go behind the back of their own org to people who, as Richard says, essentially are the enemy of people like Astralis, and use those people against Astralis to get their own way, and essentially never comment on the matter again until they come back in the lineup? Like that. What that's showing there is, like, I don't have to tell you my dad's beating me. If I come in every day with a black eye and a broken arm the next time, and then magically I go and tell my uncle, and my dad just gets beaten up in an alley one day with no one knows who. But you know what? We're all happy families again. Like, can you guys not put 2 and 2 together? Like, the idea that people were actually telling us, gaslighting us, that everything was cool, like, including Astralis players publicly. Like, would you fucking grow up?
I know. Well, and anyway, and so on it goes. So they bring in these players that are supposedly part of the dream of building a 10-man roster in on short-term contracts. Players like Snappy, who, by the way, he's tailor-made to be on a 10-man roster because his clout, his clout is credible, but he is an IGL. He is an IGL, but is he an IGL that's likely to get a big contract out there? Well, no, because he's playing for the likes of fucking Tiger. Right? That was what his career prospects look like. You don't want, by the way, if you build a 10-man roster, you don't want 5 fucking studs on the bench. You want functional players that'll work for low salaries. So if you put one in while the actual player takes a holiday, your team can still function at some basic level. So immediately, the fact that they had Snappy in for one tournament and let him go, brought in Yugi, absolute trash, but okay, fair enough. He's not going to play anyone. That motherfucker can't even get on the Valorant train. It's that bad for him. So anyway, they bring him in. Weirdly, they decide to sell him, and Snappy never had a chance of sticking around. So anyway, no problem. Don't worry. I'm sure they've gone and got Esatag and Bubsky. Proof surely now that they actually do want to build a 7-man roster, a 10-man roster, have rotational players coming in. But actually, bizarrely, just at the same time that Glaive and Zipniks, their burnout is miraculously cured and they're ready to come back. Keep in mind, also, during this time, it is known by multiple people in the scene, Zipniks had talks with other teams about leaving, right? He comes, they're all back and they're all happy families. So why are you selling these players? Why is Bubsky told he can leave? Why Esatag's told he could leave? Could it be, ladies and gentlemen, that there were ongoing contract negotiations, not just about money, but about working conditions, working environment, amount of time, commitment levels? Could it be that there was ongoing talks that broke down, and that was what the burnout was all about, and Bubsky and Esatag were brought in essentially as scabs while Glaive and Zipniks tried to hold out for a better deal? Could it be that? I don't know, guys, me. I don't write narratives. I don't work in PR. I know nothing about journalism. I know nothing about sports. I know nothing about how orgs work. I've only been in esports for close to 2 decades. Ignore me. So, guys, who, right? Oh, and also, during this time, the org is fined in other games for improper conduct from their management. So, do we believe, then, that actually all of the planets just so happen to align, and actually they do still want a 10-man roster, which is what they've publicly said, but they're just going to have to go back to the drawing board on that deal, coincidentally, just as Zipniks and Glaive come back? Or do you believe they were full of fucking shit from the start, because every action they have taken that I've just laid out for you contradicts their overall statement and goals? Which one is it, guys? Because if you believe the Astralis version, you are at this point so fucking gone. Like, you're so far gone, like, you must believe in the Easter Bunny as well, like, and just other ridiculous, protracted nonsense. Or you can actually see Astralis' behavior for what it is. And that is that clearly there was a dispute between the players. Astralis tried to fucking strong-arm them by bringing in outside players. That move seems to have worked, and they've come back for at least the remainder of their contract. They couldn't negotiate deals away, and now the game must go on. Which one is it, guys? It's so obvious.
This is also where, and I will say, some of the players, by the way, credit to the players that didn't speak up about these topics and didn't do media obligations and made no attempt to ever publicly go one way or the other and just let it play out. You at least are pros. But the couple of pros who had to come out and give their opinion from Astralis that everything was great, you did this to yourself, you moron. In doing so, you actually made it seem reasonable what Astralis was doing. So then your own fans, the people you need to be on your side against the org if the org is fucking you, they thought, oh, brilliant, I love Esatag, me. I hope he stays in the lineup for the next tournament. At which point in time, you're like, but shit, I need back in the team. You did it to yourself. You did it to your own teammates. If you all really loved each other, like your fake fucking social media manager apparently told you all say, because apparently you need to have people coordinate you saying, welcome back to someone you played with for like 6 or 7 fucking years. I don't need someone to tell me how to say that, believe it or not. Like, it's outrageous. So in that scenario, like, that is where the fans themselves are the biggest idiots of all. Like, I've been saying this, so I've been thinking of doing a video on this topic, Richard. And basically it'll explain why I'm so, just on a personal level, offended by the Astralis behavior. And I might just call it the only Astralis fan, because I don't typically say like I'm a fan, because fans usually are mentally ill, but I must be the only real fan of Astralis, because if you're actually a fan of what those 5 players did, how could you not be on my side on, I want them to play the biggest tournaments. I don't want them to be worked to the bone. I don't want them to have to go to a fucking doctor to get any games or tournaments off. I don't want them to be replaced by cut rate or replacements who've yet to ever do anything at a major. Like, who's the fan? Is it me, the guy who actually pursues these things because I care and I don't want you to fuck up the best team ever? Or the moron with an Astralis jersey who goes, hey, Pulse, I fucking love Snappy. Bubsky today. Who is it today, Nick? Nihon, please just tell me who it is and I will love them. Like, you're all the fucking NPCs. There needs to be a new term for like an Astralis guy who's an NPC. Someone come up with something clever, because I haven't got something right now, but we've got to come up with something on that one.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, and just as another thing as well, because we alluded to it kind of last week, and we didn't have time to get into it because it was already 3 hours in. It did also come up as well that Astralis were using volunteers for match coverage and social media work.
I actually, first of all, there's 2 things to say about that. One, on a more serious note, listen, I'm all in favor of bagging on Astralis. And especially if they present themselves as the biggest org, they probably should pay these people. But people know, I've got a video on my channel like about unpaid work. I actually do think it is a viable thing. It's the same concept as being an intern at a company that would never hire you. You get your foot in the door, you learn the skills. Yeah, listen, right? But I will say, just for hilarity's purpose, I even enjoyed that myself, because then when Bubsky deleted that comment, I just did a tweet that was like, wow, those social media managers are really working for their money. What? Whoops, I mean bosses.
Yeah, but here's the thing with it, right? I've said this many times, because it's something that always comes up. I get like writers always asking me, you know, should I take this gig, a publication saying that they'll publish my work, but it'll be for free. And listen, no matter how far up the fucking totem pole of greatness you get, there'll always be someone that'll try that shit on with you and say basically like, listen, we can't pay you, but we'll give you a platform, and it's, you know, and that's pretty much how the game is played. Now, listen, you have to, with every decision like that, you have to weigh it up. Like, for example, I was thinking about doing my usual getting out of esports thing, and I went and had a talk with some political publications about, you know, could I be a features writer over there? And there was a bunch of stuff that was like, you know, just the money was so derisory. Yeah. To even be a features writer at a political publication. And some were even saying like, well, listen, you know, if you seem to have done well for yourself over in that electronic sports thing, maybe you know, we'll publish you and you'll have millions of readers, but we won't be paying you. And I was like, well, I don't know about that, you know. So it never ends. But here's the thing: if I was to go and do that for free, the payoff for me would be, in my mind, well, now I get millions of new viewers with my stuff. You know, I potentially grow my own platform. Yeah. Exactly, yeah, right. So I'll make that decision, you know, as and when, right? But you know, what platform do you get writing tweets for Astralis? No one knows who the fuck you are. You're just Astralis's official Twitter account. There is no, what experience are you gaining? Absolutely zero. You know how to use a Twitter account. You probably applied for the job via Twitter, didn't you? So what you know, you're not, things like that, or like doing like match coverage, which, spoiler, no one reads it.
Yes.
when you're doing stuff like that, like there has to be an incredible opportunity there for you to sort of value your time. Are you working under a great writer who can tell you how to like put things, in a different way? Are you going to work with a social media manager who can maybe tell you how to grow your own platform, grow your own social media? No, none of these things apply to Astralis. So they should be paying you something. It doesn't have to be money even. Just give me something. Give me a fucking jersey. Give me a mouse mat. Just give me something for my fucking time. And these big orgs don't do it. They try it on and they tell you it's exposure, it's experience. Yep. It's not. In that case, what Astralis are doing, there's no exposure or experience worth having gained at all. So that, to me, is the cancer within esports. It still goes on in sports, although I think it's hilarious that when Astralis responded to the criticism, they said it goes on in all major sports. It's a little bit different, isn't it, being a fucking ball boy at Wimbledon and, maybe getting to be in the background while Roger Federer wins a fucking another Grand Slam or something, right? And being around the sport you probably play yourself to being... Right, I need you to tell Device to tweet this. Not really got the same allure, has it? So embarrassing, really, that they'd even fucking compare it, frankly. But I just wanted to put that on the record because I know eventually, long after we're dead, people will come back and say, "Who were this Astralis?" The aliens will have come down.
Sure.
We heard about this Nicola Nyholm as being the biggest cunt in humanity. So the only record of that is going to be by the podcast called By the Numbers. We'll have to go and watch it.
So I heard that guy in fucking Tenet got fucked over by Nyholm. That's why he had to do the whole thing. He just thought, fuck the whole world at this point in time for all like that. No spoilers on that one. But no, here's the thing about that. I'll actually say you make a good distinction there because that's basically I was thinking of it from my own perspective because I've many websites a long time ago had to hire people for free, obviously. But the reason why is exactly what you just said. I know idiots are going to take this out of context, but literally, if a person joined as a nobody writer for a website 10 years ago on the website I'm writing for, they have zero experience. They usually didn't even know how to make a single post. And essentially, the most experienced person in the whole scene, me, would have to train them one-on-one to do it. At that point in time, you should be paying me for that. That should be like a course where you learn how to do it. Like I'm giving you that free, as you say, like education, how to do it. So at that point in time, there is quid pro quo. But if all I'm doing is going, Device, tweet that you like Zipnix. Like that's not a fucking, you get nothing out of that. Like you're just a fucking, literally just like a cog in a machine. You do nothing.
So let's go on with the other big story because it hasn't been 100% confirmed yet. And it links into a few of the topics that I know you're also hot to talk about. JKS over at 100 Thieves. Well, the earlier in the week, the news broke that it looked like JKS was going to be leaving the team, was linked with a number of orgs. We already talked about Cloud9 and was talk about that being a potential move. But then DK did a report, which we know is as good as the real thing, that JKS would be joining Complexity as the long-term replacement for Obo, who's gone back to America because he doesn't want to commit to living in Europe during the COVID crisis. So I wanted to just pick your brains about this move. I mean, I'll say that you're a big fan. Well, I won't use the word fan, but I know you're a big proponent of JKS's ability and JKS's skills. I know you're on record in the past as saying if he'd played in better teams, more stable lineups, he could have been like an Elige-like figure, those kind of numbers. So I wanted to pick your brain about whether or not you think this is going to give Complexity a shot in the arm or a step up over Obo, or whether this could be a move fraught with potential peril.
I like it. I think this is a great move. Like for me, when this 100 Thieves news happened, which I'm sure we're going to address later, the first two people I thought of is someone better be fucking almost like airlifting JKS and Jakob out of that team. Like those two guys are fucking money. They both do their roles really well. And not only that, great personalities. They're also people who could fit in like almost any team that speaks English. Like they should legitimately have the world as their oyster. Like everyone should be coming in and saying, me, like a million suitors coming out the woodwork. But actually, I mean, there's a few, but I'm amazed that like some people seem to sort of sleep on these players. I get it because they're not like people who do interviews. Also, like I wouldn't say they're not flashy, but they're not simple and equal. Like they're not like they haven't got like frag movies that everyone's seen, But no, like if you look at JKS, mate, that is a really durable player. And I think actually the last few years he really got better and better, even though he'd been a pro for many years. I even think he's one of the players where for me, the only knock I had against him was he does have like a very reserved personality. And so I always feel people like that, that's one of the areas I started to learn about making teams that I never used to account for. I used to just look at the player of the server and be like, put this guy with this guy with this guy. But one thing I learned you have to do is you have to balance out like temperaments and personality types. So for example, if you're going to have like a fiery guy, you want also guys where they just don't get offended by people raging or shouting stuff, or like maybe that even helps get them going, you know, otherwise they're just more chill. So I always felt like maybe the main flaw in 100 Thieves was they had a lot of people who were basically too chill. And so I've always wanted to take JKS, who, by the way, in an NA team, who typically tend to be the opposite, they tend to be the extroverts who are shouting, woo, and everything going ridiculous. I always thought he'd be the perfect sort of like anchoring element to that team, where he'd be a really great player. He could fill in many different roles, and personality-wise, he would balance you out a little bit. You wouldn't be too much on one end or the other. So I think this is a slam dunk. Like I also would have loved it if he'd gone to Cloud9. I think he could have been very, very good in that team.
Yeah, I mean, so on the JKS thing, like I've got a few criticisms of the player. Like I don't think I rate him as highly as you do. He, you know, and I've watched him when we've seen him like live at events, and like I think he's a swingy player. I think first of all, I think when he's on form, I think his clutching is as good as anyone's in the game. Like when he's having like those good moments when everything in the team is you know firing on all cylinders. But let's be real. This is a team that when they moved to 100 Thieves, people were saying it was potentially a good pickup. You know, they just come out with Renegades, haven't done you know X, Y, and Z. But actually, ever since they've been at 100 Thieves, up until recently, with this little surge they've had, now that it looks like they're getting booted, they haven't looked all that great. And unfortunately, I'm a believer that, like, if you are a star player, when the chips are down and other people aren't performing, that's when you step up and you drag people through the hard yards. And I haven't really seen JKS do that lately. I also think as well, I think Obo was like, I think that's a big player to replace. You've got a young, talented kid.
It's a what if for sure.
Yeah, his like skills only going to go upwards. You know, he was reliable. His numbers were insane for like 70. Yeah, well, but you know, and JKS, you know, has that like lurking style, so that's going to have to be incorporated into the team. But look, I'll say this on the surface of it. Now is the time for JKS to prove, like, right, you know, I'm 24, I'm coming up to my peak Counter-Strike years. I've joined an absolutely sick team where the pressure's going to be off in terms of what I have to do to carry it. I can be a little bit more, you know, flamboyant in how I approach the game. And like they'll. So I think overall, I agree with you. I think like it can't make the team worse. I don't think it makes complexity worse. The question marks for me are around how much better does this make complexity. And I'll just say this again, while we're talking about great GMs with everything Henry's done, Jason Lake don't fuck around, does he?
He's one of the best, yeah. Especially because if people don't know, he really is the old school guy where it's about relationships. It's about like your eye for guy. Like he's like those old school sports scouts where all the top data people now think they're all idiots. It's like, no, the rubbish ones were idiots because they were using a busted eye test. Like they weren't good at knowing who it was. The really, really legit people. There are some people who just have an incredible eye test. Like they just, like you said earlier, that Jakob guy, like, yeah, he was incredible at finding people. Like he could somehow know this guy now is like, all right, but in 6 months, he is the next like best Danish player and he'd just sell you instantly. So yeah, incredible flipping. So I agree. I think Jason Lake's killed it as well. I'll also say, I actually think in terms of, the JKS angle, the one thing I will say is this: I can't be as confident about him as I have been about some of the other players I have who've been on the rise through because of this factor. He did play his whole career with one team effectively. Yeah. One of the things I've always thought in most games is I don't give like undue credit. Like you don't just win automatically if you go to 4 different teams in a good, but you have to sort of play a couple just so I can contrast. I can see what you like in the different.
Well, sets. I've heard from a few.
That's why I always say about Carrigan versus Glaive, for example. I've only seen Glaive do this with sort of one team basically. I've seen Carrigan do it with like every team he's in, you know.
I've heard from a few boys, because obviously I'm tight with a lot of the Aussie players. I've heard from a few boys over there that he can get a little bit of emo and stuff as well in like tough matches and that. So, you know, but I mean, like everyone's got, you know, a lot of good players have that. Like Stewie's got that, Elijah's got that. You know what I mean? Like for all the fucking Team Liquid honestly has that. I know Moses was in the chat earlier. This is now the portion of the show where we wreck Moses for no reason.
Funnier when he actually is the coach of the team though, because now it's legitimate.
Yeah. Now it is. Now we can't fuck with little Momo till the end of time. But anyway, so I think this is a sign. This is as good a sign up I think under the circumstances that Jason Lake could have made. And if it goes at the extreme end of working out, I mean, complexity are back to being a fucking easy, solid top 5 team in the world. So.
They're one of the teams I'm most eager to see offline again when that happens.
Yeah.
The potential's just nuts.
Shout out to Moses saying, "Bring it, you washed up cunts." It is true, mate. We're out of shit, Jason. We're out of shit. You know, we're so irrelevant. We might have to become a coach. Anyway, let's talk about 100.
By the way, there's even a side reason if you're an org out there. There's a side reason to also hire other people that we're friends with and longtime colleagues of. It does make it a little bit harder to fully wreck them and go on massive rants about their goddamn pro cunts, like to talk about them having like fucking threesomes, whatever. Like it does make it a little bit harder. With that said, I believe I'm up to the task.
So obviously, just moving through what the JKS.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Just because people enjoy it on this show and they won't have seen it on other ones. Like if people don't follow League of Legends, they won't know this story. But you have to understand. A lot of people have asked Richard this. They think what I do more the fat guy who used to be a good open source. Yeah. He actually famously thinks no joke because he's never met me. He thinks this is an act. He thinks I'm like fucking like. I can't even think who'd compare it, like Stephen A. Smith or something. He thinks like if I go off camera, I'm slightly different. I'm not like hyperbolic or whatever. He doesn't know like this is real. Like I do this in a green room as well. So what people don't get is they always think right that if they get the right, if they crack the code, that they're gonna like get like the real me. So when I did a League of Legends show, I think it was when I did that Listen Local show last year. There was an episode where we had Golden Glue on the show, right? And Golden Glue is a player, a notorious NA mid laner in League of Legends, who his career goes like this. He always gets a chance in a team, usually like a bottom 5 type team, and he gets a chance and he's all right. Like he's not bad, but he's just not a superstar. And he's playing the position that you're basically meant to be the best player. And so what happens is eventually you go, well, you're all right, but to have a chance to be better, I've got to replace you. So then he gets kicked either as a sub on another team or he goes down to the level below, which is called Challenger. And then he like smurfs on them all, looks really good or as a sub in scrims, he's doing well. And then he gets another chance. He's back in a team and the same thing repeats, right? So when this guy came on this show, like as I say, like a year ago, we came on the show, right? And he'd just been to Korea and done a boot camp on his own dime. Because here's the thing, right? As an actual personality, he has a mad inspirational story. The problem is, though, and you probably know if you know my career where I'm going with this, I don't give a fuck about your Hallmark movie story. If in the actual server you're just average, like I don't give a fuck. Like that's why I'm not on the X Factor train in that regard, guys. No, so this guy naively on the show goes, "You're not going to tell me." He said to me, to my face, he goes, "You're not going to tell me, Thorin, that it won't work out for me as the mid of Cloud9." If you remember, he'd replaced Jensen because they were trying to like teach Jensen a lesson about like being like a bit mean or whatever and like listening to the coaches say. For a while, he was replacing Jensen. So I just told him, "Listen, mate, you seem like a nice guy, but like this whole you being on Cloud9 or a top team, it ain't going to happen. Like stop trying to make that work. Like you can go and play for a shit team or like the bottom team, but that's about it for you." And he was just sat there like, because it's obviously like, listen, don't make that request. I will deliver. I will give you what you need.
No, every time as well. It's like I've told so many people when we're doing a broadcast, like if they're meeting Thorin for the first time, I'm like, listen, don't try and put your dick on the table and try and like fucking antagonize him in any way, because then the entire show is going to be him wrecking you and you're not going to have a good time. Get your feet under the table first, settle in, and then we'll all have some banter at the bar in a few days' time. Yeah. But don't do it on day one. So many people do. They come in and they go, "Oh, you're all right, Duncan. Remember that shit you tweeted about me?" I bet you won't say that now, and you just see Duncan's eyes just fucking, "You're all right then, you cunt." We get on air and all the saved up insults, all the cumulative burns he's been sat on, all the play on words, they come tumbling out, and these people are like, you can't say nothing back because you're on a broadcast. So just don't do it, guys. Word of advice. Anyway, so 100 Thieves, the JKS story pretty much told us what we all suspected anyway. 100 Thieves have been making a big push into Valorant. It's clearly a game that they prefer. They've brought in some big names over there. Obviously, the whole NA situation is a bit weird at the moment anyway, with COVID, all the tournaments being in Europe and people not traveling. So it's a strange one for sure. But they confirmed with a video by Nadeshot, the 100 Thieves founder, that basically, they were going to be pulling out of CS and they were going to be letting the team kind of go. Now,
video? Like, I didn't see it. So was the video along the lines of like, was he just like with like 100 Thieves swagged like hoodie? Was he just like, shit, we had a CSGO team. That's like search and destroy's better. Like, sell them. Just get rid of them. Sell them. Australia, that doesn't even exist, bro.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that it was essentially because there was like a lot of people speculating for for a good while before, like the story was essentially already being broke. So I think he felt compelled to kind of come out and address it via a video.
By the way,
so
just to
it
clarify,
looked like it was a bit rushed and a bit cobbled together rather than like an official announcement.
Just to clarify, in person, Nadeshot is actually a really cool guy. He actually is. He is a very legit. I can see why he's a very good personality. But I'll just say, I wouldn't phone him on if I had a phone a friend on who wants to be a millionaire and I was on the $1 million. Like, I don't even care if it was what is Nadeshot's name. I wouldn't call it. Put it that way. That tells you enough, guys. Love him though. Love to have beer with you. Yeah, never gonna need you though for your brain.
Well, this is like, so I did have some criticisms for him, because I mean, like, I think when 100 Thieves came into CS, this pickup of this particular team was always questionable, because these are all sound. What's that? Sorry.
Do you agree? I even told him this, dude. The problem with this is 100 Thieves at a time, the team when they were Renegades was a good team because obviously they made like semis at the major. But I even told him, dude, you bought at the top. You bought it when they you got right at the peak of the wave. You got Bitcoin when it was 20K, and you were like, I can't wait to go to 40. It's like, well, I've got bad news for you next week, mate. But
it was definitely buying at the top. I mean, had 100 Thieves got them like even prior to that major and had their name slapped all over it or whatever, would have been good business. But unfortunately, they, like you say, they got them at the top, and ever since they joined 100 Thieves, they were a disappointing entity. But like, also for what 100 Thieves want to do. Like the meme, right? Which, by the way, I think this meme is really fucking stupid. The meme is that they're a clothing company and they have like some esports division like in the basement and they don't really care about it. Nadeshot deserves admiration for standing up to Activision Blizzard and not agreeing to their terms for the CDL, because that's actually worked out. That's actually a good thing. But he took a stand and basically said, I don't want my brand to be bastardized and stripped out, and I don't want to agree to all Activision Blizzard's terms to make their league successful, where the ROI is really, really small for us. Call of Duty's where he's from. It's his fucking bread and butter. So for him to take a stand like that deserves commendation. This is like a guy who does, I know what you're alluding to, he does think about these things. Whether what he thinks is separate, I'll agree. But, he put in a lot of thought to that decision. It was a very big decision for his organization. So, but with CSGO, this was never the right move from the start, in my opinion. He brought in players that weren't big and bombastic personalities, weren't going to make content. I mean, we all know CS players, all they do is practice anyway. They practice, and their idea of relaxing is playing some fucking face-it games, some pickup games. They don't really stream. They don't necessarily want to. Yeah, they don't like doing the media side of things. So it's very hard to get a CS team that's going to have the buy-in, right? Like, now, some CS players obviously understand you have got to do these things, and more we're starting to see that. But even if these guys had agreed and wanted to be like that, they weren't big enough personalities for 100 Thieves.
Wrong team for that.
Yeah. So it was the wrong team. Just
he needed like EG or something, or Team Liquid or something. That's the team he should have signed if he wanted, like, as you're saying, to flex.
Yeah, like 100 Thieves. Tarek is like the dream move.
Yes.
Tarek's been a top streamer. It's how he came to the party in the first place. Tops off. Waving a shirt around his head, all of that stuff. It would have been perfect for 100 Thieves. And he's a likable, funny stoner dude. He's kind of like, he could be Nadeshot's illegitimate love child in many ways.
I would love, because think about how big esports is now, that I've seen that abomination of a commercial with all those legendary players and Jim Brown going ninja, which literally just made me you know what? Morpheus, are you here? Get me out. I need the red pill. I just need it out with them one. But if we're going to get to that point, you know what? In a few years, I would pay my actual own hard-earned money to go to the cinema and watch a fucking remake of Cheech and Chong, a reboot, starring Nadeshot and Tarek as the titular characters.
Be amazing.
It'd be amazing, yeah.
Oh, it would be amazing. So anyway, it was never the right move for me. But I'll also add, along the way, Nadeshot didn't really ingratiate himself to me as as an owner.
Didn't seem to give a fuck about CSGO generally, did he?
Well, it's not even that. I saw him on streams where people were making jokes about how all the 100 Thieves esports team sucked. That's the influencers that represent 100 Thieves. I saw him basically when 100 Thieves were losing to, I can't remember who it was, but they were losing a game. It might have been even a Furia or something. Just because they were ahead of them in the rankings at the time, it was like, I can't remember who it was. I don't
Chaos.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that was it. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, they lost to Chaos, and because obviously, like we all knew Chaos were better than where they were in the rankings and were climbing, but because he only looked at the numbers, he was going, "We're losing to a team that's like 30th in the world. Fuck this, man. This is shit, man." And it's like he did it on his stream. It's like, dude, like you're the fucking owner, bro. Like, what are you doing? So,
it's like this guy is a fucking boomer born out of time. You were supposed to be like 45 or 60 now, Nadeshot. Like that is when your American exceptionalism was like a vaguely plausible like premise.
and now, just as it obviously, like as we're doing this broadcast, 100 Thieves are playing Furia in a tied up series, and it took him being called out by Chad Sponge to basically say like, maybe stop streaming the new Call of Duty, mate, and watch your team. You know, see if they make it to the grand finals of this tournament. What's going to be the last tournament for your... And it's like he then turned it over and started like re-streaming ESL stream and got told to stop. And now he's like, "Hey man, like it's so hard. It's so hard to believe any of it's real." Like,
no, that's the sad thing. Is like he's another person, by the way, who
sorry, it is the final. It is the grand final. My bad. Sorry.
Yes, he's another person who isn't a character, but you would just assume he's so ridiculous. It must be like you know when people thought Carl Pilkington was just fake and he was just doing all that shit for like it was just like the most incredible like method acting ever. Like,
yeah,
these people are real. They're just some weird cunts out there.
Yeah, for sure. But like, so let's talk about the 100 Thieves leaving. Let's actually contextualize that. I mean, it doesn't look like they'll be back anytime soon. They've said they're out for the duration, for the foreseeable. They are going to make a long-term commitment to Valorant. That goes without saying with the names that they brought in over there and the money that they're paying them. But let's obviously this represents part of an exodus of North American organizations, and you seem to be of a similar mindset to me. You're not very either sympathetic or kind of saying that it's going to hurt the scene in long term that these orgs do decide to leave Counter-Strike behind. 100 Thieves is a pretty big brand to lose if you're North American Counter-Strike. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, but the point is, as we've sort of just described, they didn't really do much with the team, did they? Like, it's not like them being 100 Thieves elevated them. Actually, as we've just pointed out, they got worse. Like, if anything, they were already at that level. They joined, stayed at that level for a couple of months, then went downhill, and then they made bad decision fucking letting Cassard go, bringing in I'm a Pet. Yeah. They never made any roster move upgrades. Like, as we pointed out, they didn't seem to properly ingratiate themselves with the CSGO team or ever build them into the lifestyle brand, etc. By the way, what a massive missed opportunity that is. Think about FaZe Clan. There's a famous story that me and you know that, but it's too old for these players. When they went back in time and when sticker money was still a big thing, when FaZe Clan came in the CSGO for the first year, 2016, at ESL 1 Cologne 2016, that they had like the #1 sale of stickers on like day 3 or something of the tournament. They were like 2.5 times like the biggest teams in the world. Like motherfuckers like Fnatic who were like, like could win the tournament. And remember at the time, FaZe was never even getting our group stages. They were selling way more. So what that showed me, and I saw this with FaZe and I saw it with Optic, is if you do it correctly, I'm actually wrong. You can get plebs who follow other games to follow CS by making it part of like, well, phase up, bro. I'm a phase guy. Like I'm an Optic, like the Optic gang, or what. I don't know what the fuck the things are like. But basically, you could make people have like crossover appeal in a way I never thought would happen. Because I thought if you're not into the game, you're just not going to follow it, are you? They never did that other than Thieves, as you say. Even people in the org were like denigrating them, like being like, "Who the fuck are these guys?" Like, yo, mate, you stream Fortnite. Shut the fuck up about real players. Like, so no, I think it's mental. I'll even spin it this way as well. I'll now just put in in some people's minds, not mine, obviously, a classic style foreign, totally unexpected pivot to now blame ESL for this. Because all I'm going to say is, listen, there's a methodology. So, cause today, my boy, the Flying DJ, by the way, if we were talking about cringe names, probably on my top 5 for a Twitter handle for someone who's an executive in an esports company. But okay, I get that you're German, and that you now work in an office and have kids. So you want to be like, "Hey, bro, I used to..." That's a fucking Turkish guy, whatever. Well, technically could be German. No, sorry, maybe he was German. "Hey, bro, I used to be a cool guy. I was DJ everything. So fucking watch this. Wheels of steel, motherfucker." Like, I get that you're German, so you want to pretend you had a personality. So you have to flex like you're either into sports or in your case, you're a DJ. Like, what were you DJing? Fucking two like fucking crickets fucking. No one gives a shit anyway. And you were flying around, were you? I bet you were. I bet you had some of that fucking whiz and you were properly flying your daft cunt. Anyway, let's bring this back. So what I was going to say is this. He made a tweet today where, because DK wrote that column about how, like, you know, NA is in a dire scene, which ties into the story. And he made that implication where, because he knows from behind the scenes some of the things that we're trying to do at Flashpoint that we haven't yet implemented, I'll fully admit, but part of the premise and the trajectory and how the plan works, he basically implied that Flashpoint's like sort of the only like potential answer at the moment to some of the problems that ail the scene financially. And so obviously Ulrich got like annoyed at that and basically made a tweet where he implied, by the way, completely fallacious logic, that like, why would like big esports companies, why would they sign a deal that wouldn't be good for them? It's like, right, so you're literally going with the angle.
You've just described the history of esports.
Why would anyone ever do anything that might not be good? Like, all right, mate, well, I mean, fuck me. Are you a human being? Like, what is that question? Like, are you just a robot that operates on a strict law? Like, that's like back in the day when Lurpers used to interact with people on Twitter. They'd be like, bro, like, they're not going to admit their shit, are they? Even if their stats are shit. Like, they've got self-esteem as a human. Like, they're not going to be like you and go, yes, I am shit, I cannot deny. Like, they're gonna find a way around it because they're human. So the point is this, right? I'll just take his premise and I'll apply it to this case. 100 Thieves is one of the most successful crossover brands in esports. One of the only brands, by the way, if you told me they actually make money as an org, by the way, there might be like 5 teams that are at the top level who make money in all of esports, because it has to be with some, I'd believe it. Yeah, totally. So explain this to me, Ulrich, right? Why would a team that is in fucking LCS, they're not in CDL, right? I don't know that.
No, he held back on CDL, but I forget if I think he was. I think they're going to revise that though.
Right. So they are in LCS, and they potentially would have been in CDL. Why would a team willing to spend tens of millions just pissing it down the drain now for the chance of one day making the money back? Why would they leave your game if your EP2 was amazing with the Louvre agreement, which was going to give them all a great rev share, and in the future build up and make the money? By the way, in that scenario, potentially faster than Blizzard and Riot will. Why wouldn't you do it? Exactly. So my point is, like, I get why they're leaving, because these are the people who essentially are doing the org version of what the Jakob Lund Christian guy does in Astralis in his past, which is you're trying to flip it in the next 5 years. Like, if I had to guess, I think this is what Nadeshot wants from 100 Thieves. He wants in 5 years to do his own Joe Rogan sells to Spotify type moment where he sells for megabucks. Maybe he still gets to have like a small interest, or he gets to be like, you know, the face of the brand, or he gets paid to be the COO, or just to smoke weed and fucking talk nonsense about CS, whatever it might be. But in that scenario, because the point is, if you wanted long-term to be in a game, listen, I actually know, I'll reveal a detail people don't know. 100 Thieves, just because they're a massive org, they are nowhere close to the highest salary in CSGO. They're actually like sort of, relative to how good their team was, their salary is actually pretty reasonable. It's like right in the middle, basically, of where they should be. So when they actually bought them, that was actually a pretty good sign in terms of the money. Now, it's not that good because they haven't been a very good team recently, but they weren't even one of those teams paying 30, 40K like you hear about. Like, they weren't the ones breaking the bank. So actually, in my opinion, the fact they left CSGO tells you 2 things. One, the scene, which at the moment is led by ESL, and most of the teams, like 100 Thieves, were in ESL. By the way, 100 Thieves were one of the permanent partners of the Louvre agreement of the EPT teams. So that was a team that was supposed to be in for the long term, locked in for years and years, and they've already left. So I'll ask you that, Ulrich, why would they leave? You tell me. Probably something about fucking Nadeshot, right? And then the other angle is, in that scenario, I've lost my point there. What was I going to go with on the final? The denouement there.
I don't know where you were headed with the denouement.
Basically, like, if you're going to spend that much money in those other games, where, listen, me and Richard spend half our time in our non-CS videos talking about this. Those leagues are a joke. They have yet to ever show even a glimmer at the end of the tunnel that there'll ever be light. Not even a glimmer. It's literally just a sign saying a train will come here one day. Like, there's nothing. There's not even anything to hint at it. Like, even the reports were bobkits, like just absolute fabrications. So the idea you're willing to piss away tens of millions in the other games, but you won't hang on to your CSGO team for even 1 year, when essentially you're going to be selling low if you let them go now. What you're saying there is you literally think CSGO is a sunken cost fallacy, and so you want out. Like, you're like, I'm out now. Just ditch it. Sell. Who gives a fuck? Get rid of it. That is mental to me, because to me, now is the time where, as long as you're not breaking the bank, it's not literally putting you in financial jeopardy, you stay. This is when you hold. The smart move is the hold. If you want to sell, by the way, sell in 2 years when everything gets rosy again, then things look awesome. That's when you'll sell for like 2-3 times the money and you'll make all your money back. Like the idea that like, I actually think they've made a complete mystery, but it makes sense to me because as we've kind of alluded to, I think they were completely clueless in CS. I don't think they know the space. I don't think they know anything about it. And I even have a side theory. I'll probably do a video about it. In my opinion, because I have that come to me from fans and owners all the time, but why would we be in OWL and LCS if CSGO was a better opportunity? Because if you actually are in a game like CSGO, you, ESL, and the other TOs have to actually be competent if you want to make money. You have to figure out how to do it. You have to figure out the monetization. If you're an Overwatch League, LCS, or CDL, oh, don't worry, you're not getting monetization ever either. But you get to buy into the pipe dream that Big Daddy Riot and Big Daddy Blizzard, they'll just do all the legwork for you. They'll go out there, they'll magically invent like fucking Tesla and that Prestige movie, a machine that just converts like 20k a month salaries into like making you 100k a month from that player, and then they'll just deliver it to you on a plate. Spoiler, they won't until they've made all the money. So it'll never happen in my opinion. But I want to get your thoughts on this because I totally get, obviously I argue all the time CS is in a fucked place in terms of salaries, but the idea that you're like betting on the other tables that are even worse in my opinion and cost more, I find that crazy.
So if I was to assess all the franchise leagues that are out there now, right, and was to say which ones are good and which ones have worked out and which ones haven't, unquestionably at the top being part of LCS, LEC in terms of return of investment, commercial opportunity, shared revenue, and further commercial opportunity with sponsors external. From what I've heard, Riot are actually less egregious in how they enforce what type of sponsors you can have as a League of Legends team than Activision.
My God.
Yeah.
Bobby Kotick, you are a fucking piece of work, my friend.
Oh, he is, yeah. So I mean, and if you look at the viewing numbers that Worlds has got, in particular that reverse sweep that just happened with Fnatic, which I think set the record, it was like 2.4 million people watching, and I think that was around the world, and perhaps not even including Chinese numbers. So I mean, not bad,
That's
right?
Mental.
Yeah. So it broke some record anyway.
Respect.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, if you're a European team like Fnatic getting that kind of fucking exposure, that is, you know, that's insane. You know, that like, so the $10 million that you've paid to be part of that league, and I think it was actually less for the European teams. That's good money, money well spent. No one can deny what a fantastic job Riot have done for their partners with their franchise leagues. Next would be CDL. The Call of Duty League. Activision Blizzard actually brought in competent people to run that one and retained enough of the esports thinkers over there to work on that project, and they've actualized the commercial opportunities of Call of Duty, which Call of Duty was always a better commercial prospect than Overwatch. I think I even said that at the time. Everyone plays Call of Duty. You know, the only people who play Overwatch, people who are scared of the fucking internet. So, you know, it's not, you know, and maybe Abby Tracer, those people, you know, they don't represent a large cross-section of gamers, do they? So you've got the...
By the way, that is probably the best way to describe the OWL fan base. People who are just scared of the internet. Basically, everyone who goes like, oh my God, Donald Trump just said he loves America. I'm literally shaking. That's like the entire Overwatch fan base.
That is basically it now. Like because it's not even a good game on the surface. Like it's not even good. It's not even a good class-based shooter. They've been like Rainbow Six is a better game than Overwatch. Team Fortress 2 is a better game than Overwatch. These things are not in dispute, by the way. Even people who play Overwatch sort of begrudgingly say that, but they're locked into the fucking sunken cost fallacy. And by the way, isn't Winston cute? You know, they're just losers, and it's not a big fan base. So anyway, CDL's killed it. By the way, the person who was the commissioner and kind of running CDL, like who's now head of leagues, now that Pete Blastelica left, or rather left the Overwatch side of the Activision Blizzard business, was someone who had worked expanding business for the NFL for 12 years. They understand growing commercial opportunity for big sports brands in a franchise environment. That person should have, a Harvard graduate as well, no less. That person should have been working on Overwatch from the fucking get-go. But no, there was this mad arrogance about Overwatch. Now, the next in line, I'll probably say, I mean, you'll notice I've excluded Flashpoint from this because you know better than me about the numbers. Flashpoint could be well in there. I don't know what the returns look like.
On one tournament, and obviously, if you look at this year, like, in fact, actually, one of the things about the project of Flashpoint, by the way, is because the teams themselves fund it. We didn't have to have sponsors from the get-go. Like, listen, ESL's got way more sponsors. Of course, they've got all those years of relationships, things they built up, etc. So that's an area we're way behind. Like, I'm always talking about the future of Flashpoint. I've never seen right now it's over. Of course not.
So I've got that shelved in my brain. Alex, if I include ESL, and say that their new the Paris agreement or whichever that was the Louvre agreement. Yeah, the Louvre agreement. If we go on that, I think that's next below CDL. I think it's trundling along. The numbers because of the COVID pandemic in terms of eyeballs and optics are through the fucking roof in Europe. I had some dickhead on Twitter going, there is 25,000 people now watching ESL IEM US, and it was like the fucking New England Whalers were playing or something. How does it feel to have worse viewership than the Overwatch League? We just set another we had like 500,000 people watching a group stage game for IEM Europe, IEM New York.
I've never heard of until they won that game.
Yeah. So obviously, exactly. If you were to tell the New England fucking Whalers or whatever they were called, 25,000 people would be watching them at an Intel Extreme Masters tournament, I think they'd have fucking bit your hand off for that. So yeah, don't get me wrong. It's I think in terms of commercial opportunity, I know what it's like with ESL. It's never going to be the best. They are an org that definitely put themselves first. But I think overall, I don't think it's necessarily. I think there's been some good commercial returns for all the European Counter-Strike orgs. And then I don't know, probably like if me and you ran a league, the Bot Major, and then you get right down to the bottom, and then of course it's the Overwatch League, which has been an absolute unmitigated financial disaster. And it's like you said, it makes me laugh when I see people talk about the virtues of the Overwatch League. Talking about there's just no commercial viability in this Counter-Strike space right now. You paid 20 million to get into an IP that had been newly created in a franchise league where there was no proof of concept it could work, with regional esports, which has been attempted and proven to be small thinking and not actually work and not economically viable. In 2006, we established this as being a rule in our space. The good thing about having your whatever it is you do being online and digital means it doesn't have to be down the road from where I live. You fucking morons. How can you not see that as being a very obvious point? But anyway, if you're going to pay that type of money to be in that type of scene for that type of game, where currently right now, by the way, all fingers crossed, is that somehow Overwatch 2 is going to come in and the interest it generates is going to bring in so many players that the base of the pyramid expands and suddenly the esports is viable. It's already dead, guys. Overwatch esports cannot be a thing. You're down to 4th in the Korean Bang rankings. People aren't even watching it in China. It's PUBG's outperforming it in China. You're lost. You gambled, you lost. A bunch of people
by the way,
it was a bad idea.
First of all, I'll throw in there. What was it you just said, just before the bit about the viewership?
What about the money? The investment on the intellectual property?
Basically 2 sentences ago. What is it you said just before the bit about the Korean and the Chinese part?
Oh, where the pyramid. If Overwatch 2 is going to rescue the game,
obviously perfect metaphor there as well. Because the joke of Overwatch is this is like someone joins a pyramid scheme, gets completely fucked over because they're the base of the pyramid, puts all their money to the top of the pyramid, and then the guy running the pyramid goes, "Stick around. I've got another one coming soon." Yep. And you're like, "Ooh, can I get in on that?" It's like, you all don't learn. Because by the way, I saw you did a video about this the other day. It's amazing to me that fans don't get it shows I don't know why people do this stuff, Rich, because people are so stupid, the fans, that they'll just believe any old shit. So the fans were actually getting hyped about that thing where Overwatch has changed to a totally unique metric for counting viewers that I've never even seen before. And I've been in esports for years because obviously all the traditional metrics just don't work anymore. So they have to keep, at this point in time, I'm not joking. The next Overwatch League step is to be and actually Overwatch League week 4 broke records for the number of clap emojis given on Twitter. And that'll be like the new like fucking viewing metric. Like it's getting ridiculous now.
Well, let me just explain what I meant by that tweet, because I think some people misunderstood it as well. So the Overwatch League uses something called the AMA metric, and the way the AMA metric is that's average minute audience. So it means any minute you tune in, what was the average viewers? So we already have that metric. We just call it average viewership. The way it's the formula you use to arrive at it is the same thing, but by giving it a nice shiny name, this is what it's a trope from TV. It's a trope from Nielsen. The whole thing about using AMA, by the way, is just a power grab by Nielsen.
Yes.
Nielsen have wanted in esports for ages, but they provide absolutely no value, because the way they measure TV, it's all done with boxes and a percentage of houses across America. You can't do any of that for esports. So that's why they're pushing AMA, and all of the big companies that want to have partnerships with established media networks, legacy media networks, television networks, they'll go, oh yeah, Nielsen, thank you, you're bringing in this brand new metric that no one's seen before, and it is a true measure of how big esports is. We already had it, guys. So that was my first point. But the reason that they push AMA over any other, right, if you can distill your success or failure, but you'll notice mostly success, it's down to one number, brilliant. That's ideal. You don't need to look at all the other context, guys. Look, this number's up, so it means everything is good. That's why you pick AMA. Because if you actually go and look, what they did was, for AMA, they included all of the Chinese viewership, which, by the way, guys, Chinese viewership, it's all lies. So what they were able to say was, hey, on this one number with Chinese viewership included, viewership is up 38% on what it was last year. Isn't that amazing? But then when you actually go and look at the metrics, and I had this confirmed by Esports Charts, who handle all of that, they confirmed it themselves. If you were to exclude Chinese platforms and only go on Western viewership, it's down 19%. Using the AMA stat that they covet so much. And if you go peak viewership for a grand final, it's down 41%. So obviously, you don't want to look at all these like contextual numbers
when everyone's locked in their fucking house. Are you kidding me, Overwatch?
Exactly, and it's gone down at a time when people are watching any old shit.
Yes,
there's 3,000 people watching this. Point proven.
Well, what is the AMA? That's the question. So
yeah, true. I'll have to work it out, right? But so anyway, the bottom line is, like, it has failed as a Western esport, and that was always, it's American VC companies that are investing in this. So if you publish those numbers, the investors go, wait, the project's failed.
Yes.
If you keep pushing this AMA. And I'm sure, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they're savvy enough to know Chinese numbers are bullshit. But if you just keep pushing AMA and generating positive headlines, 38% increase, 38% increase, you can maybe fool a few more motherfuckers into getting a franchise. But anyway, the reason we're talking about Overwatch is just, there are people who have Overwatch leagues talking about, and Activision Blizzard again. I retweeted some cunt. He said that he thinks in the next 5 years, the Overwatch League will be the preeminent, meaning like, nobody above it, the preeminent esports league. Mate, it's not even the most successful league that Activision Blizzard are running. You mad cunt.
It's the gate to my house. I'll take the bet. You know what? I won't even be rude. I'll just give you even odds. You just give me the value of my house.
It's insane. So anyway,
because you'll have jumped off out of the 15th floor of a building and you daft cunt when
like it's 1929.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All, you told me.
He won't though, will he? Because it's not his money. That's the point. You're playing with house money essentially. Like the VC group who's giving them all the money will just be like, well, that weren't a very good investment. We won't work with you again. See, it costs them nothing. They'll still have an extension on the house. They'll still have the sports. This is why it's no hit to your credibility to have backed the Overwatch League. Because at the end of the day, you just get to come out and go, well, can't win them all. Smoking a fat fucking cigar that you've lit with a fucking, $100 bill. Like, so they've already won. They've already won. Like, because it was never their money to begin with. Anyway, so I'll just add, I think NACS is going to have a big problem all through 2021, but I'm like you, I'm not that despondent because we've done this before. We've gone through this before. We've had the exits before when like TSM left and CLG left and Splice
Notice where all
left.
These teams, everyone. Notice none of them are European. NA always does this, by the way, because another thing about NA as a general business region, it's actually why the original project for Flashpoint, obviously years and years earlier, when it was the genesis of the idea, was that PEA, which was all American orgs, if everyone remembers. Because the thing about the Americans is, they're just fucking copycat region in all areas. They do it in League of Legends in the game. They do it in fucking business. What they do is they look around and go, what's everyone else doing? Oh, let's do the same as them then. And then they go, oh my God, there's 2 other people left of space. The skies are falling. Let's all get out. Sell, sell, sell. It's like, there's no rhyme or reason to it.
But they also want, let's just also be clear, like, the average fucking NA GM or owner, right, for all the fantasy that they're out there making deals, like there's some Mark Cuban cunt, out there, like, making all these sick trades, and they're sat by ringside, and they're fully into the game and all that. Like, they only want it on easy mode. And that's true of all of them, by the way. Like, I'll just straight up say it, like, I mean, I don't know Jason's view on this, so I won't. Maybe I'll exclude Jason Lake. He's in Europe now anyway, so I guess he's kind of automatically excluded.
We'll take
but
him.
like, even the people that I'm friends with, even the people I've had beers with, I think you cunts, like, you've got no moxie. You got no moxie because you want to be in a franchise league. So relegations are really bad for the space.
Yep.
Well, how does the Premier League get by then? In
exactly.
Stop
being shit then.
It's one of the most lucrative football leagues in the world. It's one of the best to watch. I mean, obviously now with all of COVID, like, these things might all not be true anymore. But just talking about, like, the last couple of years, people want to watch it. People want to pay to watch it. Players want to play there. Huge salaries, all the best talent.
Yeah, mate. That
relegations.
That even shows that they are basically pussies, by the way. Because think about it, right? The argument they always give when someone says what Richard just said, like, we're in the Premier League, there are teams that are doing fantastically well with the system that has relegation. They always counter by going, yeah, but you'll find that's only the few clubs at the top. Like, mate, the people we're talking about, you are the biggest esports orgs in your region. Like, why are you imagining a world where you're the 10th best? Like, if you're the 10th best, you failed. I hope you understand that. And if you fail the franchise system, you're now weighing us down. Like, why would that be good? Because I also think this is the nonsense of it. Is, remember, the reason I'm contrasting games here is these are orgs that are making choices in other games. So the same people who are like, better get out of CS, Richard. I'm having to pay 20k a month. Takes a breath. I'll pay you 20k to be a Valorant player in a game. Like, you yourself. It's the same guy.
I know, it's ridiculous. But also as well, just to add, like, these people, they always make out they know what the fuck they're talking about as well. That's the other fantasy they've got. Like they're the guy who invented fucking Moneyball, They're the guy that came up with that, right? They understand all the X's and O's. Just to put it in context, like, I don't know why anyone listens to Mark Cuban and esports. I see him continually interviewed about esports. Like, and it's just, this guy's a fucking moron. This guy, like, literally doesn't know what he's talking about in this space. And it's an absurd premise to assume that he ever would. He has a cursory interest in it at best. And he looks at it through an investor's eyes and nothing else. He doesn't know anything about being on the ground. And this dickhead, like, also just hilarious, by the way, that he did an interview where he refused to be drawn on whether or not to condemn Chinese human rights violations of the Uyghur Muslims.
What an absolute
he is an actual moral coward across the fucking board. And I'd love an opportunity to do a fucking event. I'd be straight call him out.
Sure.
If you ever turn up to any esports event, I'm at home. You're getting fucking grilled on the mic. But anyway,
mate, listen, I'm not lying. In the same way as I've told this story before. Part of the reason I did that Shaq burn, even though I did appreciate Shaq as a personality, listen, I was a Kobe fan. So obviously that was like, listen, fuck you for the way that ended. So I'm not joking. When I saw that time he went on fucking First Take or whatever it is and like wrecked Skip Bayless by just saying a bunch of shit, like essentially playing the like trick card of like, but you don't know what's going on. Like, you don't know my players. Like, I would fucking body that cunt. I'd love to. Totally. I'd love to. I'd do it with pleasure. That's the thing.
Totally.
For free.
Well, no, but look at his esports record, right? I don't know if you remember, but there was actually a sort of competitive, hermetically sealed, not a franchise because individual players, but an NBA 2K league. Mark Cuban invested in that. It's now gone down in flames, and players are coming out saying they've been scammed out of over $200,000 worth of salary. Great investment, homies. And also, I even remember there was another one of his investment dickhead NBA friends going, in 5 years, a top player in the NBA 2K league will make more salary than like Kobe Bryant or something like that. I'm like, holy fucking shit. No, literally said that. Sam, I'm shitting you not. If you Google it, you can pull up that tweet, right? I would love to be in these meetings because I've done my fair. I've been to other planets. I've met aliens. I could never conceive of that. Like, I could never, no matter how much DMT I smoked, I could never get there.
They might actually be able to see in the future though, because you know what? Technically, they're right.
Oh,
in 10 years from that statement. I'm obviously joking.
Oh, no, not
Listen,
the
if you've ever watched this show, you've got to understand nothing's off limits. That's why we have an edited version.
I'd argue it's still not right, though. I bet his estate makes way more than those 2K shares.
And to be fair, that's a joke that will actually, after the show, you will go and cry about having made it. You'll be like, please forgive me. I know you will. you love him so much. Anyway, all by the by, let's just, I don't even know what, but the bottom line is, the bottom line is, I'm not fucking worried about NA orgs leaving. Just like I wasn't when Splice left and they lied and said, oh, we can't get sponsors because of the terrorists and whatever it was. It's like, shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. Right, I worked at E-League, you mad cunts. I worked at
Arby's had a shooting sandwiches, motherfuckers, if they care.
I know. It's so insane. You're telling me you can't find one.
This ties into what you were saying before, though. This is what they always do. This is why also, again, now it's as a pundit, not just a journalist. As a pundit, you never get to have the W. You always just get given an L, even when all the evidence says you took the W. So think about this, Richard. We tell these fuckers when they come in the space, you have to learn this space. And at the moment, you know nothing. And you've hired incompetent people. Your first signings are shit. You don't know what you're talking about in terms of leagues. And your business plan's completely out of whack and you've overinflated the salaries. The guy then goes, none of that's true. 2 years later, I'm going to leave, and it's not my fault. It's the game that was on. You're like fucking Principal Skinner or something. It's not me. The children, these guys, it's so egregious how they have to believe they're a genius as they're moonwalking out of a bunch of just money they've just millions they've thrown into a black hole.
Just smouldering on the ground.
Why is it always the game to blame? It's you to blame, you daft cunt.
I know. Here's the thing as well. I've said it. If one of these VC groups, just as an experiment, right, want me to put my money where my mouth is and give me the 60 mils you're throwing at these dickheads, I'll go out and I will build you. I will build you not just an esports brand that has value and people will want to support, but one that will also achieve excellence in a number of games. I know I can. With 60 mil, how can you? I don't understand how people can fail with that.
That's how I always knew these people were incompetent, because the amount of times that I see the GM, I've never heard of them. I see the people who they're using as consultants, I've never heard of them. Meanwhile, we knew this anyway, but it took them years to cotton on. The obvious people were always like HenryG, Moses. They know the fucking space, you morons. Yeah. The idea they weren't even. By the way, guys, some of us have been asked to be coaches. Almost none of us have been asked to be GMs. We aren't even on their shortlist because these morons usually come from the business world, and so they only want a guy to be their GM. Think about that. Who has an MBA or something They don't get it. They hire fuckers from their world. They just don't understand the space at all. And as I say, they always just blame the game on the way out as though we were the ones who made them make every wrong fucking move. Even as we were practically begging them to make the right moves.
I know. Yeah. So anyway, look, there was a tournament. I'm conscious of time because we've got viewer questions to come. There was a tournament. Because of COVID, we know the Intel Extreme Masters now gets divided up into regions. So you end up with ludicrous names. But we did complete the Intel Extreme Masters New York 2020 Europe. The European branch of it.
I just love that. This feels like fucking Monty Python or something, doesn't it?
I know, it's wild as fuck. But
ESL Germans, they have no sense of humor, so they're just like, what do you mean? It is an online tournament. I am New York, Europe. Listen, can you go back to DJing or something? Put me up a hot mix of fucking whatever, Flat Eric, whatever it fucking was called.
Flat Eric. I remember. I remember it.
And he's like, oh. Tell you what, when I get out and mixing this fresh hot joints on the wheels of steel, I might have to go and run an ESL type organization. Esports is the big shit now.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but there was a few storylines that came out. Let's do G2. I feel like we haven't talked about G2 on the show for a while. Yes. Finished dead last, which I think many people might have thought was a bit of a surprise. They were 2-0'd by Complexity, 2-0'd by Fnatic, and that's your lot.
Apparently, when they died in the game, their dead bodies spelt out the words from a bird's eye view, Nico, help.
Yeah.
No one knows what it means, though. That's
we'll get to that. I've got material for after that we're going to discuss. But anyway, it was kind of surprising. I think a lot of people have been G2. It's been a weird one with G2 because for a large period of 2020, they were right up there. One of the best teams, doing well. They couldn't get that tournament win. They were really kind of struggling, and then of late, they've really had a hard time. There's all Kenny S's forms kind of dipped quite notably. They're outside of the top 10 globally after having got to the #1 team in the world earlier in the year. So that's quite a drop. So what's going on? I mean, like these are the kind of tournaments, especially online, you're probably expecting a team of this caliber to, be a potential contender to win it. Certainly not go out dead last.
I mean, listen, you've got to start there with Kenny S, right? He's still the biggest name in the team. And this is a guy where, if you look at the first half of the year, it would, like, I know we've said Kenny S is back, just like we said Shocks is back, because everyone wants them to be back. So every time they do one round, for the last 5 years, they're back. But half the time, spoiler, they weren't back. That was just a round. But that was wishful thinking. The difference is, the first 6 months of this year, he was back. Like, if I'm naming like top 5 players, I'd have him top 5 for the first 6 months of the year.
For sure.
Banging online and offline. And you look at the style of play they had. They were one of the teams that actually got really good on like Vertigo at one point in time. Like, they had all the pieces to be an amazing team in this online era, but it has gone to shit, sadly. Like Kenny S is the first point as well. Statistically, the eye test, it has been a drop off. I don't know what's going on. He's another player where, by the way, it's not an excuse, but I could imagine if you've played LAN your entire life, and you're a player who's notorious for going in waves of motivation, if you're just literally trapped in your room, just playing online games, and then every time it's like, right, congrats, Kenny, we made semis on Saturday, right, Monday, time for the next tournament, like, oh, fucking hell, another online, like, I could imagine he might be a bit tuned out, like, they might need a bit of a refresh on that one. That's why actually Nico Johnny might even be a shot in the arm. Maybe that's what they're hoping for, like, rejuvenate the team, because like, that's the first place I start. Like, that is the biggest drop off I've noticed. Beyond that, the problem is, even at their best, part of why they didn't win tournaments is they just had a way of losing really close games. Like, somehow they would just they were like anti-clutch in a lot of these matches. When they would win, they'd blow people out the server. That's when they would look super sick. So I have to say, every time they've been in a close game like that recently, you can bet your house they're going to lose. Like, I don't care who it is. Like, in fact, this whole tournament was crazy. Like, the people in the finals were mentally even. Like, this whole tournament results were like upside down. But that's the point. Even when they're playing like, the 15th best team, they can get beat by them as well now. So I feel like they're in real trouble right now because they've had this lineup quite a while. Again, people don't want to generally make roster moves. Listen, adding Nico is different. You make an exception for that. But aside from doing a blockbuster trade like that, you're just literally just praying. You're just getting the fucking rosaries out that Kenny S comes back to life.
Like for me, I don't really understand. Like it's like if your team basically is all about one player, it's about your star player playing well. Listen, we criticized Vitality for the same shit for how long? Like, the big question was, what happens if Ziwu doesn't turn up? And more often than not, when Ziwu didn't turn up, Vitality would dog shit and went out of tournaments early. And then, of course, the players had the hubris to go, listen, it's not all about Ziwu. Well, fucking step up and show me something then, you mad cunts. Because right now, with my eyes, it is all about Ziwu. Now, fair enough. They turned the corner. The people did elevate their level. And they became a solid and consistent team that actually achieved well at tournaments. But, if G2 are falling into that nightmare of basically everyone else dropping off, because, think about all the plaudits you could pour on the old G2, right? You could say, you've got Nexa, great frag in IGL, one of the best in the business. You've got Hunter, what a little sleeper pickup he was. Yeah, what a banger. You got Jax, 27, essentially starting his pro career. Fucking hell, he's punching well above his weight considering his background. And then you got Amanek, good role player.
He's doing all right, yeah.
Yeah,
not terrible.
Not terrible. So I don't think I'm saying those things about that team anymore. I'm not watching a game and being blown away by Jax punching above his weight. I'm not watching Nexa drop 50 or 60 in a series like he used to. Now he's dropping 30s and 40s. Those frags make a difference. So it shouldn't just be about Kenny S. But if the hope is that Kenny S is going to go back to godlike form, G2 have problems. And by the way, as we'll get to once we've talked about this tournament, bringing in another star player might not be the fix that you think it's going to be. Because right now, I think it's the foundations. I think there should be enough there without a god tier Kenny S to get you over the finish line of winnable series.
I mean, they're still in these matches. That's the sad thing. They just don't win them. So I agree.
Yep. The other talking point I think that comes out of there is, do you want to talk a little bit about complexity? Because I feel like we talked about them a little bit earlier. You know,
obviously shocking that they've lost the player, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they've had to make a signing. No, I thought complexity, by the way, it was by no means an easy series for them over at G2. But when you consider they were using, like, no disrespect to Nato Safix or Nato Safix, however you pronounce it, no disrespect to him. But yeah, he was a stand-in and clearly a stand-in. I don't think he ever had a chance. I think this was essentially to like meet their tournament commitment while Jason was looking to get the checkbook out and bring in a big name. So I'm not judging him.
He's the golden goal of CSGO because it's the same shit. Everyone's like, oh, but he tries so hard. He's a good guy. It's like, yeah, go on. And in the server, I mean, he once got that up. Who gives a fuck? Shut up. Like, unfortunately, I've always said this. Like, I'll probably belabor it if anything. Like, the thing about video games is, because it's a totally artificial environment, just as sports is. Remember, when you go on a sports court, you adhere to rules that don't even apply in real life. Like, you're not allowed to do things you could physically do. Because you've made arbitrary rules, and by the way, they're man-made, it can be totally corrupt. Like, guess what? You can be the biggest arsehole piece of shit. I mean, this happens all the time in the NFL. Like, people like beating their wives, do like outrageous drug scandals. But on the field, they're straight fire. That fucking Ray Rice guy was a monster when he used to be fucking running back. He was unbelievably good. He basically like, bodied the New England Patriots by himself one time. Like, but the problem is, he was a piece of shit as a human. Well, I always bring this up. You've got to stop just like overly rooting for the nice guys, but who don't have it in the server. Like, that guy's an okay tier 2 player. He's not going to be a good player for complexity. He's not the missing piece, is he? So like, people always like, they always want like the movie version, like, oh, but the plucky you're up and comment. It's like, that just so rarely happens, guys. It's nice when it does. It's cool when it does, but it's so rare.
Yeah, and like, listen, you just have to go and look. What was that team using before? Nordavind. Yes. Or whatever it was called. You know, I was watching matches of them where they were like playing in online cups, going up against like, you know, the Na'Vi academy side, Gambit youngsters, and like he wasn't even a factor in games of that caliber. You know, and they're meant to be academy level players, and this is a 24-year-old Danish guy who's had like opportunities and been on top teams and played with some like top players.
He's had his chances, let's be real. Yeah,
it's one of them. It's just not going to happen for him. Like, you know, I don't know what his mindset is like, because I've never talked to the fella. He appears like a lovely dude, like just a nice guy. Like, you know, like, so I don't want to bang on him too hard, but like, you know, a lot of people were saying, lol, complexity, the wheels come off the juggernaut. You have to understand the dead weight they brought to this tournament. And
what an unfair assessment that is as well. You've just lost one of your players. That's where you know the little hater bitch. It's like they weren't saying shit when they were winning Blast, like all these good players, but the second they lose a player, like, oh, what, your replacement last second isn't as good as the original. Ha. The entire project felt like it's so reasonable.
I'd have Nato as like a player ahead of Yugi or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, but like that's about the level we're talking at. Like, if you have to get him into tier 1, you know, like that's how I'd squeeze him in. But you know, it's just like there was people banging on complexity at this tournament, and I was like, mate, like I don't think you guys have watched this guy play. Like, there were even some people going, I can't wait for Nato to pop off. Like, mate, I've been waiting 2 years. You know, maybe longer. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, so there was that. Do you want to talk about Vitality, and then we'll do the final?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I thought Vitality, this was another one of those tournaments where it was like ZywOo.
They should have won this tournament, mate.
Yeah, exactly. ZywOo's form right now is insane. Yep. ZywOo's form is like, you know, he like, for me, unquestionably, if we're talking about who's the player of 2020, like this guy's, he's red hot right now, and is carrying.
Because obviously Simple has to play those CIS fucking regions like this tournament. Like, he doesn't get to play all the Europeans every time, does he? So like, I agree. Yeah, the best player of this year is ZywOo.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's a shoe-in that he should win. You know, all of the plaudits, all of the whatever, right? All of the awards. But unfortunately, we're in that situation again, much like Na'Vi were when Simple was the untouchable best. You go into tournaments, and remember, you're not even going to tournaments now. You're playing online, and they're not winning. They're not winning with the best player in the world right now, the best player playing at his best over the course of 2020. They're still losing series. And it's like you say, I mean, they probably should be winning a tournament like this. And the games that they lost, I mean, who was it they lost to? It was, they had the narrow win over Fnatic. They beat complexity. Yeah, they lost to Fizz, you know, and it's like, if you'd have asked me at the start of the tournament,
a team as well.
Yeah, exactly. If you'd have asked me at the start of the tournament, like, you know, Vitality Fizz playing in like a semi-final, like, who's winning that one? Well, I'm just gonna straight up go for Vitality, especially with the big cloud that, like, you know, Kiebi, which we'll talk about in a second, like, he's been a disaster signing up until this moment. And there's a lot of speculation that Nico's out the door. So Fizz, for me, were a team that were there to be put to bed, put to sleep. And for Ziwu to sort of say, like, look, I am a guy that can, like, carry people through these types of games. But, you know, a lot of people let him down in that match in particular, you know, like, I'm so sick and tired of this. Like, Shocks get so much leeway from the community by and large.
He's
like,
beloved, yeah.
Yeah, he's meant to be a star player.
Let's be real. You know what? I might even do that. Since I've done it for so many other people, I've referenced it. I only did like one video so far, but I'm doing that series CSGO royally. I'll do a Shocks one. He deserves it.
Yeah. No, I think it's time.
Because he has that untouchable status, doesn't he, when no one's allowed to bring him down?
Everyone raved about Vitality when they picked him up, saying, finally, someone's going to shoulder some of the burden on Ziwu's shoulders. Where are you in these games, Shocks, mate? Like, where are you? Like, you know, if you are a star player, like, help your man out. But, like, you know, he got out, like, even Masuta outplayed him in this particular series. By the way, I mean, Masuta's not been a great pickup long term, and it looks like they are making moves to replace him because they brought in a sixth player. But, like, an RPK was dog shit in that phase series.
By the way, I'll give you the clue if you're a fan, because one of the other problems we have in CS, I always bang on about it, but I'll say it again, is a lot of the broadcast talent are friends with the players or used to play with the players or like the players, so they're not going to give you the real, like me, when I just come on and say, like, Smith's is shit, you shouldn't be on the team, like, get him out. Like, they're gonna like mince around with their words and have mealy-mouthed ways of saying the same thing. So the way you know Masuta isn't that good, he's just like, is like a low-level pro, is they always essentially are arguing from the position where it's sort of like, he's not as bad as you think, though. It's like, give me a break. You're supposed to be potentially the number one team in the world. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that ain't good enough, is it? There's only 5 players in the team, guys. This isn't like an enormous roster like NFL or something where you can have one player that's not that good. Like, you only have 5. They all have to be good.
Yeah, it's true. Like, so it looks like they might be replacing them. I mean, you know, those are my thoughts about Vitality. I'll quickly get through to the final, which was between FaZe and OG. We'll start by talking about OG. This was the best I think I've seen OG in a while, but man, at this point, I feel comfortable labeling them like just basket cases, like the old Astralis when they were TSM used to be. You know, you get into the hard yards, you get into the semis, you get to the finals, and then you just completely capitulate. You just go to pieces. Like, the run they had here at this tournament, it's got all the hallmarks of them winning. They beat Big online. That's probably the biggest fucking... I know Big have kind of dropped off lately online, so I am just memeing to a certain degree. But they 2-0'd Big online on day one of a tournament. They 2-0'd FaZe, right, win the tournament eventually. They ground out a win against Fnatic, get to the final. You're like, well, this is it now. This is finally OG have arrived. Alexi B's, like, you know, fixed all the things that have been going on in the team. People seem to be raising the game. Like, MBK played really well this tournament, like the best he's played for a long, long time. But in the end, they got to the final and they just shit the bed. What's that?
Imagine before the tournament, you tell them, good news, guys, you make the final. All right, fucking hell. Oh, we probably lose, don't we? Well, all I'll tell you is you play a FaZe clan. They'd think they win. Of course, that's my dream. I want that. Like, if you can't beat FaZe in the final, who the fuck were you going to beat?
Well, so the worst part as well is, like, FaZe picked Mirage, which was the first map in the final, which, by the way, remember, it's a best of 5 as well, right? And, I think OG should have won that. I think OG should have won that match. Like, it was 22-20 to FaZe in the end. But, like, OG could have stole that one.
There was some absolute robbery rounds by FaZe in that one.
Yeah, totally. There was, like, some ridiculous clutches that just came in and you know, 1v4s and shit. And it's like, guys, for fuck's sake. So then you go into Inferno, which is their pick. Clearly, the box has gone. They got 16-5'd on their map, on Inferno, by FaZe. And then... like, you're on Dust 2. Well, don't worry, guys. Anything can happen on Dust 2. Just a non-factor. Just, like, really insipid levels of performance, you know. And it just wasn't... I don't know what's going on with OG, as I said, because it's not the squad, although they probably are at the stage now where they're going to have to think about a roster change. But there is something rotten in the core. They've got that chokers mindset.
Yes.
It's just there, and you can just see it. Think about how many games they've lost in overtime,
permeates the
or
team
how
as
many
well, you can
maps they've
see.
lost. Yeah, and how many maps they've lost 16-14.
Yep,
It's
absolutely.
go look at the statistic for it. It's no
outrageous.
coincidence. Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous for OG. So
they really are the team where if they hit 14-14, bet on the other team every time.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I thought this was going to be the one where they were going to arrive, but at this point, I think they're going to have to make a change because it's been going on for too long. Any thoughts about what they should be doing?
The real problem OG has is this: is like they're not strongly enough anything. I know it sounds I phrased that terribly actually for a fucking native English speaker, but you get what I mean. What I mean is like they're not enough.
They won very bigly.
They're not enough of a distinct thing in any one direction. They're sort of like just all right in all areas. Like they've got a pretty good IGL, but have they got the best players to activate them? Yeah, not really. They've got a couple that are good. Mantu's pretty good. He isn't Zero, let's be real. He's just a good player. They've got like some veterans, but even then they're not really actually that good for veterans at the moment. Like, let's be real. We've mentioned it many times. NBK has definitely shit the bed a few times that basically the old NBK would have come through in the clutch for the year. If people don't know, I've mentioned this many times because you have to do it to contrast where they were. When NBK decided to become a supportive element instead of one of the more like focal points of the team, he was literally neck and neck with Zipnix for years as to who was the best at that style. Well, guess what? That war has been heavily won like a million times over by Zipnix at this point. It's not even a debate anymore, is it? So I have to say across the board, like they're just sort of a bit underwhelming, even though I agree with you. When they have their good moments and the good maps, they always get in position where they could be like, when you have that many times where it's like you only have to do a little bit more, they could literally with like we're talking like if I gave them like 15 extra rounds over the last 5 months, they might have like had top fours at tournaments, final. They would have won this tournament. Like it would be night and day the difference. Yeah. So unfortunately, when you have a team like that, this is where actually being a sports fan taught me this. If you're a fan of just CS, what you do is this. But we were so close. We'll get them next time. That's all right. But what you learn if you're a sports fan, because it takes years in sports to get the new players in and change and to turn around a losing team, you learn in sports the worst position to be in is the team that makes the playoffs every year and never goes deep and never wins. Because that's the team that basically won't make the drastic change because they think, we're good enough. We'll get them next year. Like the best example ever would be like the fucking Houston Texans in the NFL. Like how many times have they looked so sick in the regular season? They never did fucking anything in the playoffs. Like they were just a joke. They were like maybe one game that was good in the last 10 years. So that team right there, you're supposed to blow that up, I'm afraid. I know you've got some really good players, so you keep a couple. Like you can keep 2 or 3 players from this team, but I agree there needs to be some changes at this point. Bear in mind they've had the lineup a pretty long time. They made it at the end of last year. Probably has to be some pretty drastic changes. We're not just talking like a like for like one man upgrade. You probably have to like chop the team in half or something.
Yeah. And then obviously they lost to FaZe 3-0. No one saw that coming. I don't think many people had FaZe picked out to win this tournament. Lots going on with the team, which we'll talk about in a second. But first of all, I just want to say, like, in my opinion, the X factor, why they win this tournament overall, it was the improvement Kirby made here at this tournament. Because he even, by the way, it wasn't even a great improvement. Like, I'm not saying he was MVP levels, nothing like that. I'm just talking about he has been so fucking awful since he joined FaZe. I mean, absolutely unbelievably awful. I couldn't even conceive how bad he was going to be. The fact that he stepped up and had 2 good series out of like the 4 that they played was enough to get them over the finish line to win. All he had to do was just frag normally. That was it. Because FaZe, it's like people forget, they are still a good team. They are still a good team. You've got Nico, still one of the best players in the world, right? No one's ever said anything other on this podcast about him, except like, you know, he's a lunatic egotist. Of
course.
That's it, right? But like, amazing player. Coldzera, Hall of Famer. Even this version of Coldzera, still mustard, still good. Rain, the glue that holds it all together, one of the just best role players in Counter-Strike. And Brokey, who's punched way beyond.
Yes. One of the revelations of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Undoubtedly. So when you throw Kirby into that, you should be going, listen, you're not getting 2017 Kirby by any stretch of the imagination. But that's still a team that should be having deep runs in tournaments.
Just don't fuck it up, basically. That's what you tell them. Listen, kid, just don't fuck it up.
Yeah, but the last few times they've played with him in, it's been a fucking disaster. And Kirby has been awful. So
speaking of which, by the way, that was where I also again realized there are some people who watch esports not for the actual sporting element. They watch it for the WWE angle.
Sure.
Because you know what? Listen, I love banter, and I'm definitely not someone, by the way, who thinks to banter you have to win the match or you have to be the better player. That's actually a myth about banter that idiot fans always get wrong. You know, if I, for example, I've done it many times, Richard, if I was to banter some like legendary player, Nico's a good example, people would be like, how can you, a 37-year-old loser journalist, banter him? Because that is what banter is. It's just you have fun with ideas. You talk shit. You do it to your mates. Like, you do it to your mate who's a millionaire. You just say some shit like, I fucking sell out, whatever. Like, you just banter him, right? But I will say this, though. This is all you need to know about Kirby's level of form. The people he's picking out to banter is like NBK, right? If you're actually good, you banter the best player from the other team. You say like, listen, fucking man two, we're going to fuck you up in this game. You got no chance. Going after NBK at this point in time, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what next? You're just going to punch a little kid in the face and go, still got it. Still got that fucking right hand. Like, what is this? Like, what sort of soft targets are you going for?
No, it's true. Like, I couldn't, like, don't get me wrong. I think it makes sense why he's doing that. Like, because he's trying to draw, like, if people are talking about his banter, they're not talking about his aim. They're not talking about, you know. So, like, I understand it from a psychological standpoint. Maybe it's his way of motivating himself as well, like raising the stakes a little bit. As you said, he doesn't want to go all in on his hand, but he is having a big bet. He's done a re-raise, right? Like, so fair enough, mate. I can understand that. Like, you do what you have to do to get your levels up, and his level was up here. It weren't nothing amazing. He was basically playing like an above average pro player at this event. But that was enough for FaZe to win an event from fucking nowhere. Now,
mate, that's one thing we've brought it up too many times. It's like a meme at this point. I'm going to reference it again. Another thing, I'll say it a million times, Kirby. You can't be bad at Counter-Strike and then tell me you've invented a secret way of aiming that looks like fucking like Muhammad Ali when he was 75 years old is playing a FaZe. Like, what the fuck are you doing? That spray star's the stupidest shit of all. Like, oh, look at me. You're not killing anyone. This is so stupid.
No, but that's what blows my mind about like the Vax Sucks crowd. They're going, look, Kirby's obviously using a cheat. It's like, it doesn't kill anyone. It's like the worst fucking cheat ever recorded, you mad cunt. Like, why would it fucking be like that? Like, why would it have all the reveal but none of the kills? Like, what is that? Who coded that? They're a fucking evil genius. You know what I mean?
Mate, it looks like Kirby got way too into like Pythagorean mathematics and tries to actually spray using like the golden fucking ratio or something. Not bad. Yeah, write that down, someone.
Yeah. Mathematical humor. But anyway, like, so obviously after the match, because there's been a lot of speculation about what's going on with FaZe and whether or not Nico might be leaving to join G2, who, remember, did finish dead last at this tournament. Enter Backhand. Well, who's this? That music? It's coldzera's mother. It's coldzera's mother. She comes in, right, and she tweets to Nico. Like, hang on, like, mate, it's so mental.
This is one of the best stories to come out this year.
It's so like, because you have to remember as well, like, coldzera's mother does go to like events. I remember at the Boston Major. She was on camera. Yeah, she does love it, right? So she tweeted at Nico after he tweeted, "Fuck yes, champions of IM New York." She tweeted at him, "coldzera family asks you to rethink some decisions," and then deleted the tweet immediately because obviously, you know, she's had that boomer moment. Wait, everyone can see this? Oh, fuck.
Also, you can tell, right? I know obviously the translation might not be perfect. Like maybe it sounds more fluent in Portuguese, but like if she thinks she's hiding anything about what why doesn't she just say, "Please don't leave FaZe"? Like, why is she sort of like trying to couch it like, "We ask you to rethink some like, could you be any more
She
obvious?
has done it as well, like a full mafia don there, hasn't she? Perhaps you would like to rethink some decisions. Like, you know, it is kind of like that weird ominous tone to it. But like,
no, but she's also done that angle. Like, listen, I'm not going to reveal who it was, but it was an L. Simpson. No, that's too obvious. It's Lisa S. Like,
no, but like, so yeah, obviously, like, well, mate, coldzera like moved essentially to be in this team.
That's how good a guy Nico is. Because think about this, right? Forget how he treats people like me. people who built up the scene that allows him to make an enormous earning as a fucking bread-headed kid from fucking Bosnia. Forget
All
me,
right, Jesus.
How I know exactly. How does he treat his someone he described as his best friend, I believe he once said. He tried to go and join MIBR, then he potentially wanted to join Team Liquid with him, and now he brings him over to FaZe. By the way, he basically wrecked FaZe by forcing them to do that. Well, all right, Nico. I just think he forced him to do that. I don't technically know that he did, mate. I'm sure behind the scenes you were like, I didn't even want coldzera, my best friend, to join, but it's nice that he has. Like, because that's how you work, apparently. So he did all this stuff. And then after that, what a great stand-up guy. Oh, this team's got a shit, boys. I'm out. Well, you're the captain, Nico. What do you do? Well, first thing I'm doing is getting my Bosnian ass out of it.
I know, wild as fuck. But like, so yeah, coldzera did move like to obviously play in this team, and like, you know, listen, the reality is, you know, like it's you're far from your family. You know, he's obviously very close with.
Of course, yeah.
You know, remember, like, there's no age, by the way, where that becomes like an easy thing to just throw away. No. Like being around your family, being around your loved ones, you know, long distance relationships. Like, you know, when you're a kid, in a way, there's aspects of it of working long distance that are easier. You know, so I do fucking feel mad. Sorry for coldzera having like dropped everything to go and run what he thought was going to be the dream team. And now it looks like Nico might be going out. But anyway, this could just be further momentum.
I'm going to be playing with Kirby for the rest of your career.
Yeah, I know. Like,
that's the ultimate way to just dob this guy in it. It's like, listen, I'm out. Oh, by the way, let's just get Kirby in before I leave, so you're stuck with him.
So I want to ask you. I mean, like,
such a cunt. He probably won the tournament just so they keep Kirby.
So G2 like did so much memeing around the potential move. They did so much memeing around it. I think people thought like, oh, it's not actually really happening in the report.
No, that was just them covering the fucking story. Come on.
Yeah, but now Nell obviously drawing attention to coldzera's mother's tweet, and it being, you know, I think Nell might have been one of the people who originally reported it. His record's pretty decent. So I mean,
French teams, yeah.
So what do we think? I mean, is the move on? Is Nico actually going? And if so, what does it mean for G2 and what does it mean for FaZe?
Like, let's be real. G2 is one of the only orgs that actually could have the money where it wouldn't be like a ridiculous move for them to sign a player like Nico. Like, financially, they can afford it. I also think, I mean, we just talked about them. They're in dire straits. Like, they need some shot in the arm. I kind of sort of agree with you. Listen, in terms of Nico, I have no doubts Nico would deliver and he'd do well and he'd get his because that's just Nico. Like, he's a selfish fucker. I think people have noticed. I'll tell you how you know Nico's full of shit and a selfish fucker, guys. You ready? Follow the logic. Why does he always have to 24/7 tell you about what a great guy he is and how he's not controlling anything and how he's not a fucker and how he just loves all these guys? He never wanted anyone cut. He literally over-eggs the fucking pudding every time. If he actually, there's a little tip for you, Nico. You're not smart enough to apply it, so I'll just give you it for free. If you were just to give like 10% sort of credence to people's criticism of you, it would actually sort of like absolve you of a lot of it because people will go, oh, well, at least he understands. He gets it, that, you know, like he can't, well, you know, he understands he hasn't been as good as an agile. He never gets it. He never gets it at all. He always has like that fucking delusional, like cognitive dissonance. Like, it's not me. Like, it's the bloody game that's not working when I call this. Like, give me a break. So the problem is, I could believe Nico would get his, but I also see what you're saying. Like, put it this way: if you chuck him into a team with Kenny S, Hunter. Listen, boys, there's very few teams ever have had 3 players, except when they had like no role overlap, get all their spots and all the focal point. And the problem with that is, earlier in the year, I mean, basically as G2, Kenny S is still the face of your team. Like, he is fucking French Counter-Strike, except for Ziwu. That's just the story with Kenny S. Then Hunter, I mean, I don't want to fuck with Hunter's game at all. It's been amazing this year. That's the play you never mess with. Like, why would you bring in a player like that for big bucks and then mess around with his game? So the real problem is, where's Nico going to fit in the equation? So if they can make the roles work, great move. Might even be a good move just to get Nico. He's a good enough player. But I'll tell you what, there's another factor to bring up as well. If they have any issues in terms of personalities, mentality, I don't know that Nico's the addition that fixes that. That's not an aspect I've heard about his game that people rave about, you know.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me. I think if he goes to G2, I mean, it sounds great on paper, right? Also, big question, like who he's replacing is a big deal because you'd have to say it's going to be Jack Sarmanek.
So there's more of the supportive structure just cut out from under us.
Yeah, and it's like, well, does that work? You know, most likely it's Jack's, which just in terms of firepower, obviously is an upgrade like for like, but overall in the team, Amanek rides again.
I know what you mean, but the problem is both those players, Jax and Amanek, let's be real. whether you think they're good players or not, like I think in some ways they're overrated. I think in some ways they're not bad. The problem is they undoubtedly in that team are the two players eating a massive plate of shit every game. And having to go, thank you, I enjoy being in this team. Nico's not going to do that. So that means someone else in the team is now doing that. So this is like the irony of this, by the way, is this is the move, by the way, that shows that Nico never got it. All those things we were telling him on this show and we mentioned, and all people were like, you're exaggerating that. He actually didn't make those moves in phase. It just coincidentally happened along with his exact philosophy on the game, constantly over and over again and making the wrong choices for players he admired. Well, similarly, this move, the idea he would want to join in place of either of those two shows he doesn't get it because he's going to make another phase clan. You know what I mean? Like they'll have mad flaggers. Like they're probably a good team, but will they win the championship? Will they have will they fuck? I wouldn't pick them to do that.
No. So anyway, those are all the news stories. There were some others, but we're pressed for time, so we're gonna leave them. We'll be doing another show probably early next week. So now that Duncan's moved and settled in, so we'll sort all that out, and we will move into our patron questions. Those people who give $50 or more on the Patreon page, they're allowed to ask a question. It can be about anything. So if you've got $50 spare, which I'm amazed anyone does, honestly, at the moment, you can sign up and ask us anything you want to know. GamingPoleDK says, if you had to survive on a deserted island for a year, rather, where in the world would you pick to be stranded and why? Goes to all three of you. Do you want to start us off? Is there a place you consider paradise where you can handle like a Tom Hanks castaway thing?
Wait a minute. So it's anywhere in the world?
Yeah, a deserted island anywhere. So, I mean, kind of a bit weird because not everywhere is a deserted island.
That's right.
A deserted island in Birmingham.
I know people think that like deserted island sounds amazing because they imagine like, you've eaten fucking coconuts and it's like, oh, you're on the beach and all that. But you have to realize I fucking hate the beach and I hate the sun. So I wouldn't ever want to be on a deserted island or any scenario like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. It's one of these things where it's like, look, I'm the guy who watches fucking, Dawn of the Dead and thinks, yeah, it'd be great if everyone was a zombie and I was just holed up in a mall with a fucking, gun and unlimited ammo. That'd be sick. I don't even know if I really mean it though, deep down. And then it's the same. We're like, yeah, I'm sure a nice tropical island would be good for a month or two, like completely unplugged. But, think about what we are these days. Like, I can't fucking go 4 hours without checking Twitter, for fuck's sake. How am I going to cope completely, divorced from like all of the fucking electronic world, just walking around in a loincloth eating fucking raw fish? It's gonna break me down eventually, isn't it? So I don't know, like I could definitely do it for a short period of time, but it'd have to be somewhere nice, somewhere sandy, somewhere warm. So any of those ones out there,
I don't think you want it to be warm, mate. That's what I'm thinking. Because remember, you're on a desert island. You got to survive. Because the warmer you are, the more animals, you have to survive the heat. You're going to be more dehydrated.
When it's sweltering, there's nothing worse.
I'm thinking like Scotland, mate, where it's snow half the year. That's my water supply sorted. They got deer everywhere. That's food. I can forage berries. But I'm away, mate. Put me in Scotland. All I got to do is stay warm in the winter, and I live.
Just obviously stay off the island that Kevin Spacey was on, that movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was waiting for you to just jump straight in and link the previous question and go, well, if I could, I'd probably use Epstein's Island, probably. Anyway, there you go. There's not to say I'm good, like, and I keep it within boundaries.
Problem is, though, Richard, I'm not a presidential candidate, so I would have never been there. So.
Yeah, true. Also, Rezchi says LeBron has won his 4th ring now. How many more trophies does he need to be considered better than Air Jordan?
Right, I'm just going to say this, and I know it's going to upset a lot of the new fans, and they're all going to get butthurt because, again, they're hyped on the storyline. And also, listen, I understand why. If in your generation, the TV that you watched, the players you watched are the greatest, you in some vicarious way think you won. Like, oh, I experienced the greatest or whatever. But all I'll say is this. Any NBA, NFL, NHL season that happens after either, normally it's a lockout where they shorten the season and there's some weird fuckery, or in this case, they all went into a bubble environment where essentially there is no home court advantage. Remember, one of the unique things about hockey and basketball contrasted with sports like American football once you get to the Super Bowl is you play the finals on your home courts. So if you have the home court advantage, that is a massive deal. Like the stats on home court advantage winning in like the finals is enormous. There was no home court. This was like we all just went down to the fucking rec league and just had all the real pro players play a tournament. So listen, It's like the online era in Counter-Strike. If I have the choice of no basketball, obviously I'd pick this. But is this comparable to a real NBA season? No, it isn't. Like, I just don't think it is. So I'm sorry. Like, this one counts, but it counts like the least of all the championships. Or like, it counts like lockouts, in my opinion. So listen, you know me, like, I don't think championships is what defines it personally. Like, if anything, I even think the argument people make against LeBron isn't that he hasn't got the championships. It's like the nature of how he wins them. Like, does he need help or did he choke in the moment? Like, that's not really about how many you won. So I do think it's with how many years are left, it's possible he could win enough championships that people would say he'd won. So maybe like 2 more. Personally, I don't think you need any more because the media themselves have always been so horny to make this guy the best from like day one that like I've no doubt they would say he's the best now. I've already seen some people do it. But personally, like the problem is this. If he wins a couple more, I might say, like, as a roundabout argument, I'd have to say he's the best in as much as like he had the longest period as the top player and he did win championships with all different teams. I could make arguments, but here's the problem. In my heart, if I talk about the best, listen, championships count, but I'm also talking about like how you played, the way you played. And the problem is Michael Jordan basically had like the perfect style. He was the ultimate like hero, or in some cases villain player who like just always delivered in the big moment, like always did it in the way where it's like at the end of every tournament, you could never do what you could do with other players. Like you could never turn on a Michael Jordan team and go, he wasn't even the best. I think the other guy on the team was. Like, you can never do that. Like, it was just hands down. He was the best, wasn't he? Like, there's literally years where Michael Jordan didn't win the MVP, where we all just acknowledged, like, yeah, well, the media had to give it to someone else. You can't just give it to him like 15 years in a row. Like, that's how, like, this guy, if anything, Michael Jordan might actually be underrated by this generation because you all have only seen fucking YouTube clips. Like, I think, unfortunately, he probably is untouchable because just the nature of the storylines, the way it's gone. But I'll say, like, I'm not an unfair person. If you do just accumulate, like, undeniable stats and undeniable number of challenges, eventually I'll give you your due, even if I don't like you to play that much, you know? So it's possible, but I'm not a big fan.
Like, for me, I think obviously, like, the discussion's there, but I think MJ still comes out ahead. And it's weird because they have got, like, talking points if you can go, oh, well, you know, like, MJ made this bad team better, and then you go, well, LeBron James, you know, went back to Cleveland and fucking won them a championship when they were down. You know, so they've all got these, like, super interesting, like, overlapping kind of points in their history. I think if LeBron James plays for 2 more seasons and like let's say he wins 1 championship and plays really well in the other and has like a good playoff run but doesn't win, I think that might be enough to put him over the top on it. Or, like as you said, just as a matter of fact.
Yes.
But you know, like anyone who watched MJ play at the time, I think is always going to lean towards him because you were seeing something unbelievable, like just, you know, like nothing else on earth. So, yeah, so if he wins another 1 or 2, I think it gets really, really narrow. I mean, statistics, he's outperforming him. You know, he's ahead as the top scorer and stuff, which always is an extra, like, feather in the cap if you want to have the debate. But I don't know. I'd still say MJ. So,
anyway. By the way, that's one of those ones where people also don't get this. And this might sound weird because I didn't get it myself. Because one of the things you have to be able to do, especially if you're in like our field, journalist or content creator, is you've got to be honest with yourself and you've got to know where do your biases lie and why do you have them, for example. And one thing I learned years ago is whenever anyone's in the conversation to be the best or the top player, right, and it's someone you like, that means you've got ammunition. You can go out there and you can have an argument where you say, my guy's the best for these reasons. But the problem is, sometimes if you look at all the reasons objectively, and in your heart of hearts, even though you want them to be the best, you know, they're probably just second or third, aren't they? But your heart tells you, no, but there's reasons you could argue. What you've got to realize is, it ain't the end of the world that your favorite player is the second or third best player to ever play a fucking game. Like, I learned this with existence, etc. That's why years ago I stopped claiming like he's the best IGL. I was like, he could have been. There we go. How about that? I was in the conversation for it. By the way, even the idea that we can have a legitimate conversation about LeBron James versus Michael Jordan, I also personally think Kobe Bryant should be in that. But like the idea you can even have that conversation is an incredible accomplishment. Like I would have never thought anyone would be in that conversation. Legit.
Yeah, absolutely. So that answers your question. Jerckysminion says, would you do a podcast with Charlie Sheen if he was out of his mind on rock?
Does the pop shit in the woods?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Actually, I would probably.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah,
so I'd get him to sign a contract to sign him on for 100 episodes. Fuck one. I'd get him while he's wrecked. Sign this, mate. Charlie.
True. Like, listen, he's someone who I think is like fucking just a guy who's lived the fucking life without compromise, and
It's quite an interesting guy, isn't he?
I've always got time for people like that.
Yeah.
But I'll also just tell you from personal experience that like doing interviews and things like any form of content, any form of recording with people while someone is inebriated is perhaps a little bit predatory and not what you really should be doing.
Yeah.
And I'll say that as someone who has done that. Like, I remember there was a player in CS who I won't name, Danish lad who played, and he was fucking drunk at a party and like like an after party after a tournament, and we hadn't got a lot of interviews, and I was friendly with him, and I said, "Oh, do you want to do an interview now?" And he was fucking smashed, and he couldn't even remember what he was doing. So for a laugh, for a meme, we put the video out, and it's like I look back. Like, you know, I was a younger guy back then, but I look back on stuff like that and think that's pretty cringe and predatory and not cool.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't feel like kosher if someone had done something like that to me. Honestly, if I had to live by, you know, well, it has happened to me. So, you know, but you know, it's so yeah. It's a serious answer. I'd probably at least wait until he wasn't high on rock or was at least less high. And you know, whatever his baseline is, like to get through the day, and that would be when I would have him have him on the show.
I've always thought he should make more cameo appearances on 30 Rock.
Yeah, true. Carv says, if you were doing a CSGO The Missing Rings series, who had the biggest missed opportunity so far? Was it Na'Vi for failing to put the right people around Peak Simple? Was it FaZe for allowing Nico to gaslight himself and the entire CSGO community into thinking he can lead a team to a world championship? Well, no,
not a question at all, by the way.
No, it is the thing, Carv, because that's not why FaZe don't have a missing ring. But the obvious one is Boston.
Yes, they were one round away from the major. They have to be the one. Come on.
Yeah.
They're the obvious one. Yeah. And look at the players. Remember, 4 of the 5 players were like players that, you know, you would hope one day will get a ring, and they didn't have one, and only Orloff had one. So it's just the ultimate perfect storm of like, should have won, but just did. It's like when fucking Moss was on the Patriots and they had like that undefeated. Like you almost just expected they were going to win it.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
one.
Yeah,
great idea for a series though. By the way, it would be a banging series.
It's that, and then next is probably Na'Vi versus Luminosity, because what's really interesting about both of those situations as well is that there's a lot of exceptional circumstances and interesting things that happened on the fly. You know, like Guardian getting injured before the major, you know, breaking his elbow or whatever it was, and having to come back. Play with 3 times his regular sense because his movement was restricted. That team went all the way to the final, and then it was just a bridge too far for him. I mean, think about the cumulative wear and tear of playing through that kind of injury and through that pain. Then you had, obviously, Zeus had to fucking break down and started shouting at Flamey, and fucking Flamey sat out on stage by himself and didn't go backstage with his team to warm up. You know, you watched them come apart in real time, both physically and mentally. Meanwhile, Luminosity, like, you know, we knew they were good. We knew they were going to fucking upset someone, but you go back and you think to like just the momentum they built through that tournament with the Cold Zero jump and the, you know, that ridiculous round when they beat Liquid. And, you know, suddenly we're looking at like a convergence of circumstance like almost no other. Like you could rerun that tournament, you know, another 50, 60 times in a simulated artificial reality and probably Na'Vi win. So, you know, that's definitely one. But like I think the crazy one is definitely Boston. Like, because understand as well where Cloud9 were. You know, Cloud9 were mine and Duncan's dark horse picks. But we even said it flippantly. We said, if everything goes right for them, yeah, well, it turned out everything did go right. Somehow they dragged themselves through that tournament, kicking and screaming, fed off the crowd. Some people say literally, I say figuratively, managed to coax and squeak out performances from like Skadoodle. And even though that team was coming apart and people were arguing and shouting with each other, people just had like just god tier performances all the while. FaZe, who had been told the major was absolutely theirs, no question, all you had to do was turn up and play your CS. You watch them just wilt, and it came under the leadership of one of the like greatest of all time IGLs in the space. So it's got to be Boston, I think. I don't know if you have anything additional to add to that.
I mean, the only other one that springs to mind, this just shows actually what a fucking cursed career Carrigan would have, which would be one of when Carrigan had TSM. I mean, listen, if you play in the era where Fnatic wins 2 of the majors and you're beating Fnatic like 7 out of 9 times or something, you can feel hard pressed that you didn't win a major. Like you were better, you were literally in the head-to-head better than the team that at the time everyone was calling the greatest of all time. So the idea they didn't even make a major final with that team at the time was like, yeah, I always thought that was like, I always used to say they were the team that was like the worst ever underperformers, which sounded mad because they won loads of tournaments and they were like top 4, top 8 all the time. But like that's the point. They could have had a dynasty. They could have, I mean,
yeah,
they did when they became Astralis later, obviously, but they could have done it back then essentially.
Yeah,
with Carrigan.
Sure. Yep. Echo asks, do you think I'm just not doing that one, sorry, mate. Reykjavik on Steam. If we go back to lands and face masks are mandatory, will Taco wear his round his bald head?
Would certainly put him in a quandary, wouldn't it?
It would. Thanks, Reykjavik on Steam. I reckon he will just comply with the rules of the tournament because that's what MIBR do. SmartAsSuperman. I really got to start reading these questions before we come on air. Really, I like just so you guys know. I don't read these before. Like it's a genuine reaction. They get cut and pasted. Hi, Rich and Thorin. I only started following CS in 2015, and I have really enjoyed learning the history of Counter-Strike. And I've been hoping someone would make a 30 for 30 style documentary series for the game. What are some of the stories you guys would like to see told in this format? I often go back to Rich's interview with HenryG, and I'm eager to see the full story of CGS and its effect on the city. I mean, CGS is a mad one.
Oh, that'll be a great one. Here's the problem with this question. We will answer it because, first of all, you're a patron, you actually pay for the show. And secondly, we're just legit people. But I can already, like, listen, this moment right now, hello to all the staff of the Score Esports who's looking for their next, like, year's fucking content of videos. Like, get the notepad out.
Elevator jazz. But it wasn't like that because, as explained by esports historian Thorin for the 50th time in this video, fucking lick my nutsack, dude. Like how fucking ridiculous. But anyway, yeah, CGS would be a great one. And like I've already, like I was gonna write a book about CGS, and I started it, and then I just shelved it because I've been busy with other shit. And I interviewed a bunch of people.
Oh, if you got people from behind the scenes, I bet that's a banger.
Oh, mate, I've already got some insane shit. Like, I mean, there's some stuff that was already public, but like even getting the details of it, like the extra details, that's what really spices it up. Like just the mad stuff, like the fucking Amiga sector LAN with the Kazakhstani that was funded with some like dodgy money, people who were on Interpol, Linkin Park coming in, you know, maybe becoming sponsors of the league and stuff. You know, RIP Chester. You know, there was just a ton of mad stories. It was just insane. It was just crazy. So CGS would be a banger. I'd probably say as well if I was doing another one. I mean, the story in Narvi, 2010 Narvi. That's insane. How does a fucking Kazakhstani gas magnate end up like wanting to put a project together to represent the CIS region because he was utterly convinced that there was enough talent there to be the best in the world, something which everyone scoffed at. He threw millions of his own personal fortune into building a team which came together involving a bunch of like, you know, players that hadn't necessarily historically like played together and stuff, and ended up building the team that was the #1 team in the world for that period, broke a bunch of records, prize money won, all of that stuff. That'd be a crazy one. You got any?
I mean, like, listen, because if you do that style of a documentary, the key thing is it isn't just supposed to be like an interesting topic. You've got to have like a hook. You've got to have some angle that could catch people, because those are also, if you remember, for people who are like casually interested in sports and they want like the human element. So it can't just be like this team was awesome. So I would pick like an obvious one from CS 1.6 is like the NOA team, which had like European and North American players in one team at a time, when I know it doesn't sound crazy in 2020, but that was absurd in like 2003 that you do that. So I think that team would be super interesting if you had like all the old, because all those players would do it as well, like Element and BSL, they'd all do the interviews. So that'd be super interesting. Believe it or not, this is one area I won't be banging on MIBR. I'd love a documentary that was like, how did MIBR go from, because if people don't know, in the early days, even when it was called MIBR, Brazilian CS was irrelevant. Brazilian CS was like when Tai Lu comes to tournaments now and they come like 17th place and win like one map off someone. And we go, well, not bad. Maybe they'll develop. They went from that. And then they had this guy who was like the father of one of the players. I think it was Pred or something. He was the father of, and he would basically invested millions into the team and sent them to Europe and stuff. And eventually, they obviously became the world champions, like in 2006. So that could be an amazing human interest piece. That you come from nowhere, like literally just playing in janky land centers in Rio and Sao Paulo, and then you're the top of the world, beating out European, like Swedish Counter-Strike. Like, by the way, people don't know. They were like placing ahead of motherfuckers like Forrest and Carv.
Yeah,
Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So what an amazing document you could make out of that.
For sure. Yes,
we
could never make it because we'd have to go to Brazil to interview people.
Yes.
So well, let Sam do that one. Idea for a show. Alon says, after a few tweets by different people, and the Astralis players appearing on the HLTV podcast, I found these details. So this is just about one of the people that runs the company that bought HLTV.org called Better Collective. There's a guy called Jesper Sogard, who is another like Danish technologist. Well, he also bought shares in Astralis under a parent company called Bumble Ventures. So essentially, the site that owns HLTV, the guy who runs that company, has also invested in the Astralis IPO and owns shares in Astralis.
And there's a bit below that. Look below.
Oh, okay. What's the other bit below it?
There's another underlined part that you're gonna like.
Oh, wait.
Couldn't this be mentioned?
No, yeah, that's talking about Astralis, the board of directors. Not that
Oh,
isn't that. Yeah,
I got confused.
yeah. So that's not additional.
Oh, I see. Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're saying, shouldn't this be mentioned wherever there was anyone from Astralis on HLTV? I think like best practice.
Yeah.
What you would do is you would put a little statement at the end of any story you run about Astralis. I mean, this is like pretty common even in the corrupt mainstream media. They even sort of do this where they put like, you know, a thing at the end where it's like, our parent company Condé Nast also owns this company that we are reviewing or whatever. You know, disclosure is a good thing because it enables the reader or the viewer to sort of make an informed decision about how trustworthy what information they're being presented with is. And this to me isn't like a massive conflict of interest per se, but I think best practice, if I was the editor of HLTV, it's something I would be sure to include when I covered every Astralis story. You know, I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think Jesper, whatever his name is on the phone, like, to fucking Astralis saying, right, get your fucking boys on our podcast or anything like that. I don't think they're in some cahoots
but
with
this
each other.
way, you can't be going and saying to players who have in their contract they can't criticize the org. Like, is it true all the criticism of the org? And by the way, one of the people on the board that owns our company also has ownership in Astralis. So again, is trying to help their shareholders. Like, the point there is you don't even have to actually do something for it to be a conflict of interest. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's fair as well. That's fair comment. That's why I think disclosure is the appropriate way to deal with it. But
agreed.
But
then it's no problem if you do that. Then we know what we're going. Like, put it this way. Think of it this way, right? Imagine I did an interview with someone who, like, I'm in business with, but it's a straight fire interview. Like, it's amazing. In fact, because I know him, I'm getting all extra information out of him. Also, but as long as I say at the beginning, by the way, we're doing business together, there's no problem. Yeah. You know what you're getting when you go into it.
I think this came up earlier on one of my streams where it was like, you know, the Danish offshoot of HLTV is Dust2.dk.
Yes.
Well, I think Dust2.dk also bought like a team or invested in a team. And it's just like people said, oh, isn't that a massive conflict of interest if they ever write about them? I think as long as you put, we own this team, you know, and therefore, you know, that's all you need to say. And then you know as a reader, well, their coverage is going to be particularly favorable then. You know, I think disclosure fixes all of that. And then the last question, JDubs, imagine you're the GM of Astralis before the S-Tag transfer to C9. How would you manage the team? Switch players out, sell them, or build to a 10-man roster? I mean, personally, I would say this. I think the fact that you've discovered Bubsky and S-Tag can play at that level and you're in an online era, right? If Zipnix and Glaive are really wanting to go, personally, like, you have to start asking yourself, how much longer can those guys hang at the top? I mean, they've already surpassed what we expect from CS eras in general, right? So, I mean, I'd probably be inclined to let Zipnix go and, like, keep one of these other players. I'd have probably kept a Bubsky or an S-Tag, honestly, over Zipnix. I know it's different roles and you have to move things around, but I think the beating heart of the team is, you know, like, Magisk is like such a phenomenal talent. He's so good device, obviously. You know, you could probably afford to like strong arm these players and maybe switch it up, and maybe it extends just how good Astralis can be. I don't think the Astralis that we saw, you know, when they weren't making it to finals or whatever, while they were swapping players in and out, I don't think that was a true representation of what that squad could do. I think at the end of the day, it was clear that they had no plan. They were swapping players in and out on a whim as often as they could just to get to tournaments and get over the finish line while they were waiting to see what their players were going to do long term. Looks like they're sticking around now, but I don't know necessarily if they're stronger for it, especially with all that water under the bridge. Anything to add to that, Dunk? Or are you good?
No, I think that was fine.
Okay. Right, well, that's it then, mate. So, all that remains to be said is a shout out to all of the patrons that funded the show. Oh, no, sponsors first. Shout out to the sponsors, ReykjavikOnSteam.com. Go to ReykjavikOnSteam/RLS if you want to sign up an account and place bets on esports events. They're also going to be the proud sponsors of the Bot Major, and obviously they sponsor all the No Majors Club content. We're going to show you a little bit about that in a second. Obviously as well, go to NordVPN, nordvpn.com/RLS to get 70% off your VPN. It's a great product. We've had loads of positive feedback about that as a sponsorship deal. You can put exclamation point NordVPN in the chat to find out more. Follow that link. You'll be supporting the channel. It's even cheaper than the cost of a sub, so just letting you know that. Now, also, shout out to the patrons. $100 patrons, Jerckysminion, Kashanath, Sean Gares, Flacksmith, Alice the Alchemist, Marcus Kyumpar, Detlef Insomniac, our $50 patrons, JDubs, Quasar Fox, Tobias Bernasconi, Butt Pounder 420, Watch Doge, ReykjavikOnSteam, Carv, Zinged, Benakagi, Sard Sawar, Sigo, SmartAsSuperman, GamingPoleDK, Alon, Daniel Magnuson, Echo, Rezchi, Miss Alcoholic, and Cathal. Thanks so much for your continued patronage of the show. And what we're going to do now is remind you that very soon, I'm hoping Duncan will be involved in this, we're going to be running the No Majors Club Bot Major during the time that the major was meant to happen. Obviously, we're trying to give everyone in the community a lift, so we're not too sad about the major not taking place. So we're going to run a bot simulation of the major with all the No Majors Club crew coming on board to do commentary and have some fun and have some laughs during the broadcast. We're now going to show you our first little tease video about it to give you some details. So thanks a lot for watching the show, and we'll see you next time.